All right, I think we're live. So welcome on to another Matt Maran Motoring live stream here on the Matt Maran Motoring YouTube channel. Hope you're all having a great weekend here. Thanks so much for stopping by. So for this live stream, I'm probably I can go for 2 hours, but we'll see. I know we have a MLB playoff game tonight. We have an NFL game. I think it's the Patriots. And then we have an NBA preseason game. So I'm up against a lot of competition tonight. So we'll see, if it kind of dies out in here, at some point I'll probably just pull the plug, but I'm happy to chat as long as you guys are wanting to chat as well. So like all the other usual live streams, I give priority answering to anyone who has a super chat or a super thanks, as well as anyone who's a member there with the green usernames. They always get that priority answering. If you like that, there's a link in the description. And I see we have Stilla Buster, Anthony, Theodore, Kevin, Lanswath, B. Mitchell, Vishal, Kyle, Chad, Will from San Diego. Thanks for stopping by, everyone. And Still Buster says, hey, all, only car spot I've seen so far was a 91 Accord wagon. Hope you and the family are doing well. Thanks. Hope you're doing well too. And that's a cool spot. My spots so far, so just today, actually, I saw a couple interesting ones. Otherwise, it wasn't notable this week. But I believe it was like something in the mid 80s Porsche 911 Turbo that was nice. And then also it's been a while since I've seen a Pontiac Trans Am that had the single round headlamps. I can't remember which year that was, but it had the big chicken on the hood and all that. But I hadn't seen one of those in a long time. So looked like it was in really good shape. I didn't get super close to it, but that was a nice one to see. And hope you guys had some good spots too. Anthony says his spots were in a bunch of old school cars: Thunderbird, 57 Chevy Gasser. That's cool. Rolls Royce Corniche and a Gen 1 Land Cruiser. I think there was a local car show by me this weekend. Nice. That's fun. Yeah. I was in the area of Cars and Coffee as well on Saturday morning. I wasn't able to go, but I ended up seeing there was Lamborghini Gallardo going by. I can't remember. There's a couple others too that they were clearly all headed to Cars and Coffees. That was fun. I was close to getting to a Cars and Coffee this year, but couldn't quite make it. I had other more pressing matters, unfortunately. But let me see here. Theodore says, is it me or is it more females are driving four-door Jeeps? I think that's so cool. Yeah, I mean, I think Wranglers are massively popular. I haven't tracked the sales really this year or paid attention to them, but I know Wrangler had been growing pretty nicely for a while there. And especially now, I think there's pretty good deals on them. Same thing for Bronco. I mean, you can get a huge amount off of Bronco, so that helps get a lot of people into them as well. So I'm glad they're becoming more accessible and less elusive. Kevin saying good evening, and Still Buster also says, what's a minor inconvenience you wish you could banish forever? Mine is being forced to do self-checkout at the grocery store. The constant please put item in the bagging area after doing so, FML. Yeah, it is annoying, especially if it's like a bad self-checkout. There's some of the better ones that don't nag you as much and that are faster. I'm usually, this is probably the opposite of what you'd expect from me, but I'm fairly antisocial when it comes to shopping, and so I prefer self-checkout because it means I don't have to talk to anybody. Which is probably terrible to say, but that's just, I usually just like going in and out. I don't need to make small talk, so I just I actually like self-checkout, but if it's a bad one, that can be annoying for sure. I totally get it. As far as a minor inconvenience I wish I could banish forever, I don't know. It's a very good question. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. I'm curious if anyone else has any they want to weigh in on here, but yeah, I don't think, I mean, maybe, again, I've had some nice car sales experiences, but I'd say, if everyone could just buy their cars online and you could test drive without having to deal with a salesman, that would probably be, a minor inconvenience that would be nice. Even just with the car purchases I did this year, I mean, thankfully the Cochrane one was a good experience, but even getting to that point, I got to get other price quotes from other dealers to, see if there's anything else out there that was a better deal. And just, I hate getting price quotes. I mean, the runaround, the incompetence, me telling people how to do their jobs, or, saying, hand holding with them, being like, look, like, this is how I got to this lease payment. Here's the incentives I use. And they're like, oh, okay. And then it's like, can you do that? It's just like so much. It just drove me crazy. And it'd be so nice and easy if I could literally just, like, for the Fiat, for example, gone on and, immediately found the best offer from whatever dealer or whatever and said, okay, this one's offering this amount, this is the lease payment, done. And I could have had the whole thing done in an hour instead of that was a weeks long process. So honestly, I think that's the biggest gripe is just car sales are just so much more annoying than they have to be. And again, there's some that do it better than others, but just in general, I mean, it'll be a relief, I think, whenever more and more car companies can eventually transition to, a less, salesman heavy dealership kind of experience. Dealerships are still going to be around for servicing and, selling used and stuff like that. But, we'll see if they can actually make some breakthroughs here. Amazon's trying, they have the Amazon Autos now where you can kind of just buy. It's kind of that idea where you just like buy the car through Amazon. It's with Hyundai right now. And it still goes through a dealer, but I think the dealer could just either drive the car to your house or you go pick it up, but at least everything's done. And, but I don't know if that's actually the best deal or not. That's the only thing is, a lot of times with some of these things where you can kind of do that, you're usually leaving money on the table. So if there was an actual way to know, like, this is the bottom pricing wise, then it'd be something I'd be happy to get rid of, I think. And Lancelot says, good evening, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well. The only spot I have is a last gen Pontiac Bonneville. That's cool, though. I don't see too many of those around too often, so that's fun. And B. Mitchell says, evening all. I finally had a chance to put 100 miles this season on my 78 Lincoln Mark V. Oddly, no other spots while I was out driving it today, aside from Ram with PA plates hauling a 69 Chevrolet C10. Nice. Well, that's cool. Man, that Ram was a long way from home, but glad you got to do a nice long drive in the Lincoln, and that must have been really great. Great cruiser for 100 miles. That's awesome. So glad you had a good one here, V. Mitchell. And Vishal says, hey, my spot today was an Isuzu Trooper. Haven't seen one in a long time. Always liked how those looked. Yeah, they're cool. And yeah, that's a great spot. I haven't seen any of those in years. That's great. And Kyle says, hello, everyone. A guy in the neighborhood behind me has a black Plymouth Prowler. It looks so nice. That's awesome. I feel like you don't actually, at least I don't see very many in black. They were always like purple or the yellow or silver even, but black, yeah, it looks great on Prowlers. That's awesome. Such a cool car, even though I know most people think it has the wrong engine. It's just still such a cool car. And Chad says, saw another SRT 300 in really nice shape. Always loved those. Yeah, those are great. That was still one of my most watched views of all time was the SRT 8 version, the first generation of the SRT 300s there. Let me see. Kyle, thank you so much for a very generous super chat here. He says, Matt, how much do you think the $7,500 EV tax credit ending on 9/30 will affect sales? So I think that what you will see is that like anything where there's a big buying push and then everyone has stuff, I think you're going to definitely see a drop off for sure. How much of a drop-off, though, remains to be seen. It really comes down to how car companies play it. We saw a little bit of a preview of this with, Hyundai just announced earlier this week pricing for Ioniq 5, and they dropped the price by almost like 10 grand on some of the trims. And some of the, I think the lowest cut was like almost $8,000. So they're essentially, even doing better than the credit, and you really aggressively pricing those. Which, is an interesting move. And I don't think every car company will be able to afford to do that. But it does kind of justify this, mentality of some people had where they're like, do we actually need the credits? Are companies taking advantage of it? And they could have actually priced the Ioniq 5 at this price all along. Or is it just that now it's been out for a while and it's been amortized and paid off enough that now they can have that pricing flexibility that maybe they didn't have before, and the EV tax credit actually did matter? It's kind of hard to say without getting a behind the scenes look at the books there for these car companies. But we also saw Ford and GM. It seems like they've found a workaround to keep the tax credit as long as inventory lasts for the next couple of months here, where they're basically, I guess the loophole is in the ending of the tax credit, it said that if someone has put down the first month's payment already and has signed for it, then they're able to still get the tax credit. And so I think with Ford and GM, they're saying that their financial arms are buying the cars kind of and putting down the first month's payment themselves, but then those vehicles will still somehow be able to be leased. I don't know if that's just because they're making exceptions with what their finance arms are usually not allowed to do, of essentially leasing a used car. But I don't know how that would work with a Carfax if you're technically a second owner. I don't know. There's a lot of unanswered questions there. And I think that's something where dealers had to opt in, and some may, some might not. So, so that might be how Ford and GM kind of roll for the rest of the year. And then we'll see maybe what they do in January. I don't know. And we're kind of waiting on other car companies to see, how they're going to play things. I know with Subaru Solterra, they said they're not raising prices on that. So it's sticking at the price it was at before with all the improvements. And I think that starts like 38 grand. So there's others where they're just thinking, okay, well, we're giving you a lot more than we did last year, but we're not going to lower the price. And they hope that maybe that helps it to not crater in sales. But, no matter how good the pricing is, no matter how compelling the product is, it's like everyone got the new iPhone, and now, once, all the early adopters get it, you're going to have a trickling off of sales there for a while until new fresh stuff comes in that people, gets people off the sidelines. So there's going to be some of that. I mean, I'm a prime example. Like, we got the Fiat, that lease doesn't end until, middle of 2020, or actually, I think middle of 2028 is when that ends. And then, the Lyric's a 2-year lease, but, we don't have to worry about it for 2 years. And I'm locked into both of those. So those aren't going anywhere, no matter how good, the pricing is of a new car or whatever happens, So like, and there's most people at least here to take advantage of that tax credit, you can get out of it a lease, but it's, a little bit more of a pain than selling. So, I don't expect any of these people that have already gone for it. So now it's again trying to convince people that for some reason didn't want a $200 a month car, for the whole year, whenever that was, being pushed. And it's just, again, so aside from the high end stuff, I think there's going to be very little EV sales for a little while here. I mean, you will have some compelling stuff, people that maybe were waiting for the new Nissan Leaf, people that might be excited about the new Bolt, but whenever a Blazer was leasing for what a Bolt will likely lease for now, Bolt will probably be more expensive. But like, that's kind of what I'm saying. Is like, I'm sure most, even of those people that were like, maybe I'll wait for this or that, just got something nicer. You can get a Nissan Ariya for $200 a month. Why would you go for a Leaf and wait for that if you have this? So, I think it's going to be hard. I think it's going to be hard for a while. But Hyundai shows, they can't have these really aggressive prices still. Bolt's probably going to be priced really well. We got this new Ford EV truck thingy, I think, coming in the next year or two here. So there's going to be some other stuff that will keep the momentum, going. It's just that you're going to have it slow for sure. So that's I think where I envision it going. And this is part of why I think with my own review strategy here going forward, like I am going to do the new Nissan Leaf this fall because I think that's a very important car. I have a passion for affordable vehicles. And surely there will be a few people that, again, still need to shop for that stuff. If someone totals their lease that they just had in the past year or whatever here, there will still be people that buy this stuff. But, for me, like aside from a couple EVs that I'm really passionate about, like giving publicity to, essentially, the only EVs I'm interested in reviewing now are going to be the ones for people who didn't care about incentives. So I'm talking like Escalade IQ. I'll probably get around to reviewing here later this fall. $100,000 stuff, which, but even that, I'd rather just say no and just go film some other used thing or some sports car or something instead. So I'm probably going to pull back on EV reviews, not because I, don't like them or something. Like I still think the world of them. Obviously, I put my money where my mouth is, but it's just that, I don't envision there being a lot of shoppers. And what I'm doing is helping people find cars they're going to enjoy and cars that they're actually, considering. And I just don't think there's gonna be a whole lot of shopping. I think that's kind of where I see it. But I don't think that means, again, that it's just, oh, well, the tax credit was the only thing keeping EVs going. I think it's just that everyone went out and bought one finally. EV sales are through the roof. They were just skyrocketing for basically every brand, no matter how crappy or great the car was. Everything was just, selling like crazy. And some car companies are already seeing this, writing on the wall, like Nissan Ariya not having a 2026 model year. They're pulling the plug on that, again, probably temporarily, or, waiting for, a new version or something, but they're not going to be in a hurry. We just saw this week Ram has, or in the past week or two, Ram is not doing the electric Ram anymore because it's going to be an uphill battle, especially for trucks. And then even they just said they're canceling the Banshee, the fast electric version of the Charger Daytona, and so they've completely lost the faith on the next 3 or 4 years. And I mean, I don't know. Stellantis is acting like there won't be any kind of policy changes in the next few years or even into the 2030s, the way they're just kind of completely giving up on a lot of their EVs. So I don't know. I don't know what Stellantis is going to do, because it's, Chrysler seemed like they were basically all in on EVs. Now, what do they have? If all the EVs stuff is going to get killed off or is going to be put on the back burner at the very least, then there's no new product for Chrysler. I don't think there was a single gas thing in product and in development for them. So do we see Chrysler fall away? Do we see and they just turn the Pacifica into a Dodge again? And I think there's going to be a lot of interesting kind of stuff that drops out, and again, we're already starting to see that. But it's going to also really differentiate the car companies that truly are invested in EVs for their own sake, and whether or not they sell super well, just saying, hey, we have to keep supporting this, we have to keep developing this and improving this, because someday this will also be popular in America like it is in the rest of the world. And some car companies can't afford to be so isolated like Ram is and some of these others, where they have to kind of build global cars. And so some of these things also might just drop out of the US and they'll continue on to the rest of the world, because that's like, what's the point of certifying a car here for the States if only 1,000 people are going to buy it anyway? So a lot of these things, I could see even some of the Toyota EVs possibly going Europe and Japan only, and then coming back in a few years, possibly, if because again, the rest of the world's going to carry on, even if we're going to be stubborn about it, like everyone else is continuing the adoption curve in the rest of the world. So it'll just come down to which car companies can be picky about regional stuff. And companies like Ram and Dodge, obviously, like that's the whole thing, is American market. So of course they're going to dump everything immediately, because they don't have to worry about the rest of the world like most other car companies have to. Stellantis has other brands for that. So that's the long answer, I suppose, for that. But great question, Colin. Thank you so much for the generous super chat here. And it'll be an interesting rest of the year here, I think, for car sales. And Wyatt, thank you so much for a super chat. He says the Stang had her first road trip about 850 kilometers. She did well, and nice cut. You look like a recruiter for the Army. Well, I think this is a little long for a recruiter, honestly. I know my buddy, whenever he had his military cuts, it was even shorter. But yeah, thanks. I just had to get a cut. It was getting kind of wild, so I appreciate it. And thanks for stopping by, Itch, and for the super chat. And let me see here. So Vishal says, also my Jetta had an issue this week. I'll explain later in comments. Oh no, well, hope it all was minor and wasn't too bad. And Raphael, thanks for stopping by too. And CDM as well. And Fook. And Luke says, a family visiting me this weekend. For some reason, my ceiling fan in the living room is only 2 years old and the bulbs are going dim, even brand new bulbs. Interesting. That sounds like it's like a wiring thing or something. That's strange. But yeah, light bulbs, I was so excited whenever these LED ones started coming out, and I was like, great, I don't have to worry about light bulbs for years. And it still seems like they only last about as long as a regular light bulb. And I mean, they're better for energy efficiency, but aside from that, it's just like they're more expensive, and I wish they lasted longer. But best of luck getting that sorted out, Luke. And Fook says he saw a 930 Target today. Very nice. That's cool. Raphael says he saw both a new Z and a Supra in the same day. It was very cool. Nice. Yeah. It's Z is now outselling Supra, so I'm hoping we'll see more Z's around, because I think it's a cool looking car. I want it to do well. But Dustin says, hey, SuperX fan, what are your thoughts on the O2 WRX wagon manual with the EJ207 VF39, STI pink injectors, intake, exhaust, tuned, lower power, around 317 horsepower? Can this be a reliable daily? I'm not a super big expert on those. These days, I'm a little rusty on that, unfortunately. Any Subaru forum, Facebook group, subreddit, things like that would probably be the better place to ask. but yes, if you have a lower tune on anything, typically that improves your chances of reliability. And as long as the mods are done well, if you're talking about a tune that's a high quality tune, high quality parts for all that stuff. I mean, you said, the STI injector, so that's obviously OEM. And as long as everything else is high quality, I mean, if you're just intake and exhaust is pretty basic. So as long as the tune's good, yeah, I wouldn't be worried about that as long as that motor has been maintained. I mean, you're talking, about a car that's 23 years old. So really that's the deciding factor beyond the mods is it's, do you have maintenance records? Does it have, good Carfax or, just the more you can find out about it, if you can, prove that it's had regular oil changes, that it's had all the scheduled maintenances, that's going to be everything. That's really, the more like I'm doing a little bit more of these used reviews this year, and the more and more that I dig, especially with modern cars and especially cars of like the past 10 years, I know that doesn't apply to an O2 WRX, but most stuff is pretty reliable these days, and it all comes down to maintenance. And like you'll see, I'm going to be having a review on Tuesday of a 2017 Audi A4. Which strangely has a ton of search volume on YouTube. That's the other reason why I'm doing it, because I know it doesn't sound super exciting. But the one I reviewed had like 98,000 miles on it, I think, and it had every single service done meticulously at exactly the right time. Every oil change, never missed. It was always under 5,000 miles or whatever. Or, they just did all the, scheduled stuff the way the owner's manual says to do it. And it drove like a new car. It was a 100,000-mile Audi, drove like a brand new car, but 8 years old. Was maintained well. You can tell that it was like, on the inside, it was, still really pristine. And it just shows that like these cars can hold up if they are actually cared for. It's just that most people, they do a 3-year lease on something like that. They trash it, and they're a lot cheaper for the second owner, third owners. And, you just have stuff that just gets put through the ringer. And, that's, I think, part of the whole problem with Hyundai and Kia is, they depreciate faster. And so that means that that's more attainable to more people. And that's good, but it also has its cons because people that are, looking for something cheaper are more likely to skimp on an oil change or to miss something like that, So, I think that's part of why, like, if people treated Hyundais the way they treated Toyotas, and you had a Toyota buyer who was meticulous about maintenances and, was babying it, knowing, and this car is going to last me for the next 15 years, if you treat a Hyundai like that, I truly believe it's going to give you, a very similar amount of life. And so I think, maintenance is everything. So same thing with that WRX. Try and, figure out the maintenance records, because otherwise, they can be bad too. I was just even looking, I talked about this actually on Wednesday in the past live stream. I saw there was like a Subaru Forester that had 150,000 miles, but it had a short block replacement at like 40-some thousand miles. And EJ Motors and all those, I think that one at that point, I can't remember the generation, but I think that might have even been an FA. But like Subaru Motors, if they often don't last super long, so it's always a roll of the dice. But at the very least, if it's got perfect maintenance, that would be something I would be more willing to take a leap of faith on than something where it's got a shady past and you have no clue. And I know it's really hard with old cars. It's kind of is a complete guess sometimes, but if you can do a compression test, any of those kinds of things to at least help you a little bit and get some ideas. But anyway, best of luck, Dustin. Hope that helps a little bit. And Fuchs says he saw a 911 Dakar earlier this week. Very nice. That's awesome. Chaz says, I don't know much about them, but I think the old Cadillacs with the fins are super cool. I passed 3 trucks towing one. Each on trailers. Real great way to start the day. That's awesome. Yeah, the old caddies are so cool with those fins. It's funny too, because the fins, I don't know if this was entirely the reason why they got rid of it, but they were pretty pointy. And I guess there was, like kids and stuff that were getting hurt running into the backs of the fins in some of these Cadillacs. I think that, they got rid of them. It was a phase and it lasted a decent amount of time, but then it did go away. I'm sure B. Mitchell can kind of correct me on all the ins and outs of why fins came and went. But that was just kind of a funny thing that I picked up along the way over the years here about those pointy fins, but so cool. I love those little caddies. W. Mitchell says, Gen 2 Poncho Firebird, maybe you meant Pontiac, with single headlights were from 1970. Oh, gotcha. We're from 1970 to 1976. Okay. Wow. So that was even older than I thought. That's cool. And thanks for the info there, B. Mitchell. Theodore says, I hate self-checkout so much. All right. Well, I mean, it seems like, I don't know if you guys have seen this, but some places are starting to bring it back. And like, I think at least the Targets around here, I think because of all the shoplifting and stuff, they shut down the self-checkouts. And so a lot of times I'm forced to go to a checkout person if it's like after 8 or 9 o'clock. So that's sometimes I have to do the regular thing, but I think that's that, you know, they're kind of realizing the limits of self-checkout in some cases because of, you know, just people walking straight out whenever you don't have anyone standing there to intimidate them. And Vishal says, driving home from work and suddenly the car started to bog down and flash the check engine light. Cleared itself after 5 minutes of driving, made an appointment and took it to the dealer the next day. They found that cylinder 3 did a misfire and the reason was bad gas. They took a fuel sample and showed me the cloudy material. Pretty wild, but all good now. They put a fuel additive in to clear it up. That's crazy. Well, I'm glad that bad gas didn't completely ruin your engine because, you know, that is something that sometimes happens is it just really royally screws stuff up. So I'm glad that the car kind of protected itself and seemed like, you know, the bogging down means that maybe it was trying to kind of really go into a limp mode, you know, so that it didn't try and use that engine too much. But that's crazy. I mean, I'm sure the dealer checked everything out there because sometimes, you know, you do need to get new injectors if it gets kind of gunked up, but hopefully the additive, clears it all up. I'm sure, you know, obviously they know what they're doing. So, but, you know, if you do continue to have issues, you know, just take it back because it could very well be that, you know, the injectors or the fuel line, you know, might need some extra attention too, if it really, you know, was bad stuff. So that's crazy. But yeah, glad that all worked out. Hopefully that, I guess that wouldn't be covered under warranty. Hopefully that didn't cost you too much out of pocket, Vishal, but yeah, crazy stuff. And Luke says, someone doing 1 mile per hour faster in the left lane than the rest of traffic. Yes, that is, or 1 mile per hour slower, Chad says, yeah, which is even worse. That would be a nice thing to, get rid of. I think that, you know, the autonomous cars eventually will kind of clear out that left lane for us. You know, I think it may also come with some other downsides, but I think once, you know, there's more automation that will force, you know, the rules of the road to finally be followed a little bit better, at least here in America. Vishal says they found, okay, sorry, I already read that. Raphael says, my problem with self-checkout is that you're making me do the work, but I'm not getting a discount. That's fair. Yeah, it's hard to say. I guess maybe if they discounted it at the register, then you'd feel better about it. You know, because who knows if the prices that you're paying would actually be higher if they had more workers and you're just getting that baked into the price of the, you know, thing that you're buying. But it's hard to say, again, without looking at behind the scenes books, you know, who knows if they're actually discounting it or if they're just pocketing the difference to, you know, boost their shareholder value or whatever BS they're trying to do, you know. I don't know, but yeah, we'll probably never know. I'm sure those types of things I don't usually like to disclose. Mr. 705 says, I think almost all auto manufacturers would switch to direct sales if they weren't tied to dealerships and unions. Absolutely. Yeah, they all know that the dealership is the worst part of the experience. And it's tough to have a middleman when every other product basically on planet Earth you can buy without a middleman. You know, it's definitely tough. And Kevin says, hi, I've been watching your reviews since the WX days. Well, thank you so much for watching all these years. I really appreciate that. He says, I just paid off my 2020 GT Performance Pack 2 401A. I'm still bummed that you sold the Bullet, but as a husband and a father, I get it. Keep up the great work. I appreciate that, Kevin. Thanks so much. And glad you got yours paid off. Hopefully that means you can keep it for a long time and continue to enjoy it. And PP2s are rare too. So that's a good investment too, hopefully, but I hope you're still enjoying it to the max. And Vishal says, also sadly saw 3 Cybertrucks lined up at an intersection. Really felt like I was in some dystopian world for a moment there. I bet. Yeah, I saw 2 within a minute, and that was pretty bad too. It's always funny though, because now my daughter will like point them out, and she thinks they're cool, and you know, fair enough. She knows that that me and Beth like hate them and, you know, just think they're hideous. So, but it's this funny thing where she's like, look, there's one of those, she doesn't call it a Cybertruck, but you know, she's like, there's one of those crazy trucks, Dad. I'm like, yeah, that's there it is. And she's it's cool. I'm like, yeah, yuck. And we're just going back and forth, just kind of playing around about it. It's kind of fun. So, yeah, whenever I'm alone in the car, I do just kind of like do a head shake every time one passes. And None of your business says, there are talks more recently on possibly raising speed limits listed as 70 to 80 miles per hour on freeways. You think we should go full Autobahn? If we had licensing like they do in Germany, yes, I think we should go full Autobahn. But since we basically just give anyone with a Pulse a driver's license here, no, we should not go full Autobahn. It sounds great for those of us who actually know what we're doing, but then you think of every other psycho out there doing whatever they want to do. It would get ugly real fast. I mean, and I don't know, maybe your state is considering that nationally. I mean, I guess, I don't know. There's, I can't apply logic to anything that happens in the next 3 years here, but, I think that, the IHS and a lot of others are saying, roadway deaths are up. It is a problem, and it's getting worse, not better, even with car safety being so much better. And it's a lot of it is tied to speed, partially because cars are faster than they've ever been before for the average person, and also partially just, I think we have a lot more road rage. We have a lot more aggressive driving, which often includes higher speeds. And so, it sounds like, what I've been hearing is there's more of a push, at least from these former regulatory side, and just from, again, the insurance agencies and all, to try and lower speed limits is really what they would like to see happen. Now, will that happen? I don't know. And I talked about this on Wednesday as well, so I apologize for those that were in that one. But the IHS is saying that by 2027, in order to get a top safety pick or top safety pick plus award from them, you are going to have a speed recognition software. So basically, like the speed limit monitors you see on cars, where they have this traffic sign recognition, and it tells you, and some cars, like even I have a Honda CRV right now, and that has a little like red dot on the speedometer for like what the speed limit is, and it just presents the speed limit. It doesn't slow me down. It doesn't yell at me for doing over the speed limit. I think I could enable a warning if I wanted to. I'm not sure exactly how much they're going to want it to be pushed on people, but basically, if you want to have that top thing, you're going to have to at least have a system in your car that tells you this is the speed limit, and kind of reminds you of that. And I think they want to eventually kind of get that to a point where it does start to limit. Now, can they limit very much? I don't know, because then you go into, okay, well, what if it is truly an emergency? Are you truly running for your life or something? Like, how much can you actually limit before you get significant pushback? And I think that's always going to be like forever the debate, which is why I don't think they'll be able to get too far with it. But, if they're at least shoving a speed limit warning in people's faces, that may slow some people down. But yeah, so I mean, that's the kind of discussions I'm hearing about, and the stuff that is planned. Again, that's set in stone for what's happening in 2027 for new cars. So I just, that's kind of the direction I see things going, is slower, not faster. But again, I think there's limits to exactly how much they'll be able to push that. So we'll see. But Lantern Tail says, hello, it's been a while. Thanks for stopping by. He says, spotted Waymo's testing in Bellevue, Washington. That's fun. So I guess, yeah, where is Waymo operating? I was talking to a neighbor about this the other day. They're in San Francisco. I think there's some in LA, right? And I think Arizona might have some. I'm not sure anywhere else. Maybe others can weigh in on that. Obviously, I know the autonomous Tesla stuff is testing in Texas, but yeah, that's cool. You saw one of those. I haven't ridden in a Waymo yet. I'd like to, because I think it'd be pretty cool to try. I also I'm curious to ride in a Jaguar I-Pace, which is what most of those Waymos use. I've never ridden in an I-Pace, so it'd just be fun to check one of those out too. Which turns out they seem to be more reliable than anyone expected them to be, because there's these Waymos with like hundreds of thousands of miles on these Jaguar I-Paces. I mean, maybe they've gone through a ton of batteries and electrical work. I have no idea, but they got the odometers to prove that some part of that vehicle has rolled for that much mileage, and so that's a nice surprise there. Let me see. Wyatt says, how about them Blue Jays? I'm actually rooting for the Blue Jays. I don't have time to really watch the games, but I'm catching the scores every once in a while, and I think the Blue Jays are who I'm rooting for here. So further going along with my Canada solidarity and my sympathy for them, I'm going to root for the Blue Jays this year. I hope the Blue Jays do well. I'm pulling for you. And Luke says, I'm showing my grandfather your acceleration reaction videos. Nice. Hopefully you get a good laugh out of them. Yeah, those are funny. I should piece together a new one of those someday. Because I used to do them every 100,000 subscribers, and it's going to be a long time before I probably hit 500,000. So, yeah, I should probably maybe I'll do it at the end of the year or something. We'll see. Because there's probably been a lot at this point. Because I mean, even though I do less exciting stuff than I did, back then, there's probably a decent amount to do a nice compilation. So maybe that'll be a project for the end of the year. We'll see. And Dave says Subaru in general wouldn't be my choice for reliability. Yeah, same. I mean, it's so funny because like Consumer Reports just gave them the top number one ranking here for 2025, and that hasn't been my experience. That hasn't been the experience of multiple Subarus that family members have owned. That stuff I've heard from others. I don't think they're actually as reliable as they are made out to be. If I want a reliable car, I don't have to worry about. I mean, there's some exceptions, but like I'm always going to just recommend a Toyota or a Honda to somebody because that's about as safe of a bet as you can get these days, especially Toyota. But I think Honda's right up there too. Let me see here. Jordan, thank you so much for a super chat. I really appreciate it. He says, I had the last Windows phone and the nav app showed the speed limit and warned of speeding. Yeah, I mean, I think most phone apps do that. I know Waze shows you that. Apple Maps shows you that. Google Maps, I believe, does. I think they all do. Maybe someone can correct me if there's any that don't. But yeah, I see why it says, Google Maps makes the speed limit go red if you go over it. Yeah, so I mean, I think, we're already used to that. I think it's just, they want that baked into the car. So in case you're not using a navigation app, that you always just are cognizant of the fact that you are going over the speed limit. Because, I mean, it has been shown, even like the little roadside signs that you see like oftentimes under a speed limit sign that shows you your actual speed. The data shows that those are actually effective. Now, obviously, some people don't give a crap about them, but like, a lot of people that are just zoning and not paying attention to their speed, which I think is truly what happens in many cases. If they're reminded of that, they do slow down. And, so I do think it works. And so as long as, again, it's not too overbearing, I have no problem with that, And again, I think, we're all used to it already anyway. So hopefully it won't be too big of a thing to riot in the streets over. But anyway, let me see here. I also see Mr. 705 says, thanks for the support. Of course, I wouldn't have it any other way. It's Canada's getting a raw deal right now. Anyway, let me see. So Keys with Soul says, have you ever driven the 7th generation Honda Accord V6 6-speed? So that's 2003 to 2007 for coupes and 2006 to 2007 for sedans. I don't think I've done one that early. I think I did an 2007 automatic. I don't think I did a manual for that generation. I did the manual. I think I did 2 manuals actually for the next generation. But I don't think I did the one before that. They're super rare. Trust me, if one came, through, I mean, again, the one dealer I work with has like 1,400 used cars right now. I'm always keeping an eye on what they're getting in, and I looked for old stuff in particular. And if any of that stuff came in, I would be all over it. So I'll keep my eye out. I'd love to review one if I can, because I know they have a cult following, and I'd love to try it out. But the old ones that I did, that were just the newer generation, that were still fantastic and really nice cars. And No English says, hello, are you familiar with CTSs? Yeah, I reviewed the CTS V Sport, it was called, back in 2015. Did the CTS Vs. I did every generation of the CTS V actually. So I've done even the oldest one all the way up to the newest one, and of course CT5 too. CTSs are great. I think they're really good values too on the used market. And they're really good handlers. They're nice cars. I like every generation of the CTS, honestly. I think they're all really well done. Obviously, maybe the interior is not as nice as the Germans or something, but a little simpler, probably a little bit more reliable as a result, compared to some of the really old German stuff, which did have some legitimate reliability issues back then. So I think that's the thing. One of the things I like, in addition to the great handling of the CTS. I think they're really great cars. Vishal says, with German cars, people tend to come from Toyotas where they might have deferred maintenance, and then they get mad with the car when it has issues. As you saw with that Audi, maintenance is everything. Absolutely, totally agree. And Armageddon says, "Hey Matt, longtime fan. Your Boss 302 review is probably one of my faves. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed that one." He says, "Got questions for you. I've got an '05 Audi B7 S4 wagon manual. It sits at 130,000 miles. No rattle due to timing chain, or maybe new rattle due to timing chains, or no rattle. So I'm not sure. Let me see. I don't see any follow up. Let me know. Let me see. I don't see any other comments. So if there's another part to that, let me know. But as far as your car, yeah, I mean, hopefully it's still doing well. Yeah, that V8 motor, especially if you take care of that timing chain, I think was the main thing. I personally, even back in the day, like a long time ago, there was a mechanic actually at the Audi dealer I used to work at back in high school and college, who I think his was over 200,000 miles. And it seemed like that motor, as long as you took care of the timing thing or whatever was that one Achilles heel of that thing, as long as you took care of that and you did it, you took care of everything else really well, that motor should go for a long time. It seems like it's a really solid motor otherwise. So hopefully yours continues to do really well for you. That's a rare bird too, man. An S4 wagon with a manual. Hang on to that one if you can, because that's going to definitely, if it hasn't already started to appreciate, definitely probably will. So nice one. Glad you have that. And Michelle says, we've had a great experience with Volkswagens because we always do the maintenance on time. Yeah, it's all about, like anything, you take care of it, it usually takes care of you. And Jordan, thank you so much for being a member for 2 years now. I really appreciate that. He says 2-car accident, 2-way road. Will the insurance companies collect your speed via digital data as opposed to verbal phone calls or physical police reports? Well, usually with that kind of an accident, if there's any kind of post-accident investigation, they'll use the black box data. Cars have a data recorder, just like an airplane. And so they'll retrieve that and they will get answers that way. That's usually, though, again, if we're talking about either fatalities or any kind of illegal stuff that happened where, they're not able to get answers or get any kind of testimony out of, a driver or something. But if it's, one person's word versus another's, then they can pull that as well, I think, too. But usually that's on really heavily damaged cars, so it comes out of how bad the accident is, I think. But they still can do it the old-fashioned way, where police can conduct an investigation and look at how long the skid marks are, look at where the car landed, where it left the road, all that kind of stuff, and do pretty accurate calculations. That's what they've done forever, as far as figuring out what all happened. So that's oftentimes, but usually for an insurance company, they don't really care about all that stuff. They just, they're worried about the car, and, they do their own inspection of, is this writing off? Is this, going to be something we're going to try and fix? And then as long as there's no sketchy stuff that's suggested with, the basic police report, as far as it being insurance scam or, anything like that, then, I don't think they really care a whole lot. It's just, they usually have to pay, even if you're a bad driver, like, they may drop you or something or raise your rates, but typically it's just a cold hard, like, can we fix this for less than what it's worth? And that's kind of usually the big thing there. Sorry, Armand says, sorry, I was asking if I should keep it. I mean, it comes down to how much you love it, what why you might be considering upgrading. If there's things that you would enjoy, I mean, I'd argue though, like that generation S4, I believe it was a double DIN kind of size head unit, right? So I mean, you could pull that out, put in a touchscreen, get CarPlay, Android Auto, all that kind of stuff. If you wanted to modernize it a little bit, if that's kind of what you're feeling as far as why you want to get out of it. But if you're just worried about it, not lasting or something because of the mileage, 130,000 miles. Again, if that motor's been taken care of, I wouldn't worry about it. If you enjoy it, absolutely stick with it. Especially these days, again, I guess the interest rates have dropped a tiny bit, but it's not like there's great interest rates on most vehicles and stuff. Maybe that might get better later in the year if we start to see car sales slow a little bit more. But yeah, I mean, I would just stick with it, especially if you love it. If you have a bond with a car and that's really strong and you're happy with it, I think a lot of times a lot of stuff ends up just becoming regrets for people, unless you have something that's really strongly pulling at your heartstrings to get something new, and there's some new car you're obsessed with, you can't live without, then go for it. Otherwise, save your money, you got a car that's most likely paid off. That's, you're saving money on it. You're enjoying it. Stick with it, which is a bad thing for a car reviewer to say, because the natural answer for business would be shop for a new car. But no, I firmly believe, yeah, keep what you have if you like it. Cars can last a lot longer than people think. A lot of us, if you're around my age, you still remember the stuff from the 80s that fell apart, before 100,000 miles. The 90s stuff was, a lot of it was crap unless it was Japanese, but cars have come a long way. And even in, early 2000s Audi, if it's maintained well, I think you should be pretty decent with having some good fun, a lot of good use out of it still, hopefully. And I appreciate all the hearts and all that, everyone, as well. And Kevin, thank you so much for a super chat. I don't know if you had any message attached to that. I know you have another comment here, so I'll check that one out here too first, and then I'll go to the others here that we've skipped over for a minute. But so Kevin says, looking to replace my Gen 3 Taco TRD Sport 4x4 manual. Truck is used for towing, ATV, snowmobile, camper. I really want 3 pedals, but nobody makes a sporty midsize truck. Our Raptor or Durango SRT 392. I would at least, this is adding another car in, so I apologize, but I would at least test drive the new Tacoma. I know you want something sporty, but Gen 3, can't remember exactly which years that is, but that's not the new one, I'm pretty sure, right? So, the new one is punchy. That turbo motor, it moves, and, you can get that with the manual. It's hard to find, but you can get it. You just got to do the work, as you can't order Toyotas, annoyingly. So you got to just, expand your search radius, find a dealer that got one allocated and get it that way, or have a dealer, maybe dealer trade one for you. But I don't know if that'll be enough, but if you just want something faster than what you currently have, new Tacoma is, miles better as far as driving in every single way. So if you have it, I think it's worth at least a test drive. It might be hard to test drive a manual, but at least try and test drive an automatic just to feel the powertrain. If that's not enough for you, totally fine. And I'll answer the other part of your question here of if you're talking Raptor R or Durango SRT. So if you're talking F-150 Raptor R, if that's what you mean by R Raptor, those are wild. They're obviously, supposed to be wild and very expensive. If you're talking Ranger Raptor, that's a really fun one too. But just obviously, not the 3 pedals there. Durango SRT 392, those are, a bunch of fun as well. Good for towing, it seems. I've never towed with it myself, but they seem like they're good with towing. It's a simple kind of vehicle. It's, it's a little dated, but Durangos are still great for those who don't need to have, something that's super cutting edge, and that obviously will fix the, the power thing for you. And also, again, would be fine for towing, that kind of stuff, the basic stuff you mentioned there. But I think, Raptor, I've never driven the Ranger Raptor still, unfortunately. So I can't say, about that. But, it sounds on paper like it's phenomenal. And if you are, if you do like Toyotas and you are considering stuff in that price range, and you're, obviously not going to have a manual with the Raptor or the Durango, I still would give, the new, maybe the engine's just not what you like, but, the new Tacoma, I just did the TRD Pro once again in the 4Runner, and that powertrain, I love that powertrain. It's so responsive, so ballsy, and just flies. And so, that's overkill as far as the towing goes, but as far as just the fun that you kind of are looking for there, again, I don't know how you feel about Toyota. If you're looking to get away from Toyota, then obviously disregard. But if you do like Toyota, you like your dealer and stuff, I'd try out the new Tacoma and see what you think of it. But between the Raptor R and the Durango, I'd probably go for the Ranger Raptor, just because it's a little more modern, little safer, because I care about that stuff, versus the Durango. Is a very old platform, doesn't do super well in crash tests and stuff. But Durango's really great though, and I think it's priced pretty well. And if you're going SRT 392, maybe it's a little bit more expensive unless you're shopping used, which is also worth considering. If you can find a lightly used one, you probably save yourself a lot of money, by the way. But if you can get a good deal on a new one, that's obviously still a fine choice too. Thank you for the extra hearts and extra love as well, everyone. And Jordan, thank you so much for another super chat. He says, will you be honest on any updates or recalls on the Caddy and the Fiat? Very useful info. If so, I think those updates would make great shorts for YouTube. I'm always honest. So 100%, if either of them turns out to be a complete piece of crap, it'll be great for content. So I will absolutely, I mean, there's nothing people love more on car YouTube than, a car that's failing or turning into a complete piece of trash. Like, you know, I don't want that to happen, but I mean, I will absolutely milk the hell out of those cars. If they do screw me, I will make sure I get my money's worth out of it. So yeah, I have no allegiance to, yeah, I mean, as you guys probably know, I'm very blunt and honest. I have no filter when it comes to that kind of stuff for the most part. So I will absolutely be honest if something goes wrong. And we do have a few minor little complaints with the Cadillac as far as there's little minor annoyances. There's a rattle in the front of the moonroof opening that happens not consistently, but from time to time. There's a squeak in the center console with the trim where the trim isn't totally fastened super well. Another thing that's kind of popped up in the past few little weeks here is that the car doesn't like to always stick to its charge limit. So Cadillac actually recommends sticking to 80% for regular daily driving and charging it only to 80% unless you're going to actually use the full battery. And obviously, basically no one does that on a daily basis. So, we charge it to 80%, but the car will sometimes go to like 81% or 84. And sometimes the app will actually tell me we're charging to 90%. And I'm like, who told you to do that? And so I think it's an app thing possibly, but even in the car's head unit, I'm like, only go to 80%. And the car knows when it's at home that it needs to always only be at 80%. And I don't know if it just doesn't fully understand if it's at home, like if maybe it thinks it's one street or one door over or something, and that's what's causing the confusion, or I don't know what it is, but like our Mach-E never had a single issue with that, not once in 3 years of owning that thing. Now am I mad that I come out to a couple percentages of extra battery some days? No. And obviously that's not going to ruin the battery if I'm at 84% versus 80, but just, obviously just something's amiss there and just, something that hasn't been perfected. But again, is that worth ranting about in a video? No. So that's why I'm going to compile a little list, and I think either towards the end of this year or maybe at the 1 year update for the Lyriq, if nothing else is mentionable in the meantime. I will have all these things in a list. So spoiler alert, I just gave you the first 3 there. But aside from that, again, they've both been really good. I mean, the Fiat I haven't driven a whole lot, so admittedly, it's had an easy life as far as, is it going to fail if it actually gets some real miles on it? Maybe, maybe not. I don't anticipate it to. I mean, it's almost at 1,000 miles now. I've had it for, it's going to be about almost 8 months now, 7.5 months here. 970 miles on it currently. And like 150 of those, or actually 170 or something, we're just driving it back from picking it up from the delivery guy. But anyway, yeah, maybe that'll have some issues, but even that, the reason why I got the Fiat was because it, has been around in Europe since 2020. It's very much a late entrance here in the United States. And so, yes, it was, 2024 is the first model year here, and that's what I have as a 24, but they've been around and they've worked out most of the bugs in Europe for the past 4 years before they ever built my car. So, from what I've seen, they're actually pretty reliable now. Again, we'll see. And again, I'll milk it if it turns out to be an issue. I'll have a video of me standing on the side of the road. I'll have a video of it going on the tow truck. I'll have all the fiascos of the dealer. I'm more than happy to be completely transparent about that if that does happen. But thankfully, they've both been really great for us so far. So we'll see. But I'll keep you guys posted. Especially the Cadillac is going to be, it's only a 2-year lease. Only going to be, we're only doing 10,000 miles a year. So in 20,000 miles in the car, do I expect there to be any issues? No. So that one will probably be pretty boring, much like the Mach-E, where really wasn't a whole lot to talk about aside from faster tire wear and the rear brakes that sucked with their, scoring themselves on the rotors there. But other than that, there was nothing to really say, which is why we didn't do a whole lot of content on it. And I'm expecting the Cadillac will be like that. But the Fiat, is a 42-month lease. So a little bit of a longer period. And, just come down to, how much I end up having to drive it, which probably won't be a whole lot, but I'm always honest. You can always count on that for me, for better or for worse. Even if it annoys you guys sometimes, I'm always blunt and honest about my opinions and what's on my mind. And thank you so much, Jordan, for the super chat, and I appreciate all the love and all the hearts once again, everyone. All right, let's get back to some questions here from members, and let me see. So where are we here? Raphael says, I bought my Sonata with 96,000 miles and traded in at about 188,000. Nice. Did all the maintenance. It never had a single issue. There you go. Thanks for making my point for me, Raphael. I appreciate the backup there. Yeah, so that's a great example, and I'm glad that yours treated you really well. See why Itch says he actually loves self-checkouts. Just kidding. So fast and buy one, get one. Yeah, that's funny. Nabi Mitchell says Ralph Nader did make some hay on tail fins being pedestrian hazards. That was why he said he titled his famed book Unsafe at Any Speed, since even standing still at 0 miles per hour, it was still dangerous. Interesting. I never knew that about the book. I never actually sat down and read that. I always assumed it was just about the Corvair, but yeah, that's interesting. I'll have to go back and read it someday. Thanks for the clarification there, V. Mitchell. And Vishal says that was all covered. Thankfully, that's great. I didn't have to pay anything at all. I was worried about that, but luckily warranty covered it. I'm surprised. I would think warranty would not include bad gas, because that's really not Volkswagen's fault, but it's also not your fault either. But good luck getting any money out of the gas company or whatever that you're buying from. So the fuel company. So I'm glad that Volkswagen took care of you. That's really great to hear. And Michelle says, is it me or do red lights feel like they take longer lately? I feel like I'm sitting at red lights longer than usual. Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't experienced that myself, and I'm curious if any of you have had that as well. YH says, what is this, Matt Moran Economics 101? Maybe a little bit of that. I apologize. I do have a degree in financial planning and did a lot of economics classes, so I'm not the most disqualified person to talk about that. I mean, I'm very rusty, so definitely not the most qualified either, but I'd like to think that I have a little bit of a grasp on economics, but I'll try to limit the lecturing here. And Lantern says Forza Horizon 6 has been recently announced, coming next year, and is going to be set in Japan. Yes, I'm so excited for the new Forza. I don't know if I'll have time to play it, and I probably won't even have the console to play it, because right now I have the last generation Xbox. I don't remember what it's called because I'm that out of the loop. But man, there's a bunch of stuff. I really want a PS5, but now my sister just told me they're like $700 now for a PS5, which is insane. And I do not have the money to blow on a game console, spend that much. I can't even probably afford to use PS5. So I mean, that's ridiculous. But part of me would love to get a PS5 for all the games that are coming out next year that I want. And I guess, Forza should be on that, right? I think it might be a little bit delayed, but for me, that'll be no problem, because it'll probably be years before I get around to playing it anyway. But I'm excited for it. I'm excited for everyone else that's excited for it. And I will someday, hopefully, play Forza Horizon 6, but I am pumped. That's going to be so sick. I'm so glad they're doing that. Like the best possible choice. And I don't know about you guys, but at least the stuff that I've been hearing announced for 2026, I've been so out of the loop on video games for a long time, but I feel like there hasn't really been a whole lot that I've felt like I've missed out on, honestly, either. But I'm like, man, like I got a list of like 5 or 6 games that I desperately want to play next year. Probably won't play any of them, but I'm making a list now. Like, man, like I want to play through these games, because like there's the new Bond game coming out. First Light looks fantastic. There's Forza. I've still been wanting to play Gran Turismo just because I'm nostalgic from the old ones. There's a couple others too that I've been wanting to, I'm looking forward to playing, hopefully. Also GTA 6 potentially, if that comes out. Everyone's been waiting basically 2 generations now for that game to come out. It's so funny. I can't remember exactly the year it came out, but I think we're not far off from like people that are going to be able to like actually buy it under the mature rating that like almost weren't even born when the last one came out. Like it's insane how long it took for that, but that should be fun too. So a lot of good stuff next year for gaming. Maybe if no one buys cars next year, I'll just turn it into a gaming channel instead. We'll see. Let me see. So Mr. X-Ray says, what kind of level 2 home charger do you have? We just actually do level 1. I just plug it into the wall outlet, and that's enough for us because we never drive usually more than 30 miles a day. We plug it in overnight, and it's all charged up by the next day. So yeah, we don't even have a faster charger. I do have fast charging, like DC fast charging. That's like 10 minutes from my house. If I'm really in a pinch and need to juice up a press car really fast or something, I can go do that, and I do that sometimes, but it's so expensive. So most of the time, I just try and plan out recharging press cars, so they can just go on the trickle charger really at home. But that's been fine for us. And the funny thing with the current charging setup is that we're using the Ford charger that we got with the Mach-E, 3.5 years ago, or 3 years ago, I guess now. And that one's still working. They let me keep it whenever I traded in the Mach-E. So we'll see how long the Ford charger lasts. I got a Fiat level 1 charger, and I also have the Cadillac charger. Both of them can be turned into level 2 with just a different plug. But so I got 2 chargers in backup waiting to be used, but I'm still running the Ford charger there, and that's been doing great. So high marks there for the reliability of the Ford mobile charger. And Lancelot, thanks so much for gifting 5 memberships. I really appreciate the generosity, and so happy to see a bunch of familiar faces and some new ones there. And even YH got a membership there. That's awesome. So thanks so much, Lancelot. I appreciate it. Let me see here. So where are we here? So that's what says rolling trash can, with yes, some of these people, the way they treat their cars. Absolutely. And Raphael says, imagine a US Autobahn with the people that drive 50 in the left lane, the carnage, right? Yeah, exactly. Just, you don't want that. It sounds real nice, but we don't want that. If we were a country of rule followers, like Germany often is, and others, then I'd be all about it. But we don't like following rules. We don't like people telling us what to do here. So as a result, we don't get the fun things like the Autobahn. And Digifix says, I'll take my risks. I would like to raise the speed to 100 in the fast lane. Well, you do you, but I do not want to live in a world where every person can do 100 without any repercussions. I would be like, man, I would stay off the highways because I got little kids in the car, and if every psycho wants to do 100 miles an hour, I'm not taking that risk personally. But let me see. B. Mitchell says, when North Dakota went to 80 miles per hour on freeways in August, their highway patrol now can and will pull you over at 81 mile per hour, $20 per 1 mile per hour over 80 for a ticket. They also knocked down the limits to 70 around cities. Interesting. So I can't remember what it was before. Did they go up or did they go down? Because I thought some of those parts of North Dakota, wasn't it 85 or even 90, or maybe that's Montana I'm thinking of. It's interesting that they're really sticklers about every mile per hour. Here, it seems like definitely if you're 5 over, you're usually fine. Most people, it's like, from what I've seen, it's like if you're 10 or 11 over, that's where you start to really, run your risks. But yeah, personally, I'm usually just doing 5 over most of the time, unless if I'm in a little bit of a hurry or traffic's flowing a little faster, I'll go faster than that. But especially now, having a kid and driving the family around most of the time, and also the fact that like press cars, they always like are checking your driving record every so often to make sure you're not racking up speeding tickets and stuff. So like part of my job also depends on me being a driver with a mostly clean record, and in my case, thankfully, knock on wood, is a totally clean record. Aside from the one ticket I got back in 2010 or 2011 or something. But so yeah, that's interesting though. B. Mitchell, thanks for sharing. And let me see. Lancelot, thanks so much for a super chat. I really appreciate it. He says, I live in Montana, and they did the reasonable and prudent on I-90 for several years. Our speed limits currently are 80, except around the cities, and it's 70. Okay, so now same as North Dakota. Okay. I thought, wasn't there that one stretch? Maybe that's what you're talking about, the I-90, where they were open with that. But so did they end that then? So because that was, people love Montana for that. Did they actually get rid of the whole like high speed limit thing there? That'd be interesting. But that's oh man, yeah. It's been a while since I've been up in those states. I need to get back to Montana sometime because I loved Bozeman was beautiful. Whenever I was there with Honda back in, I think it was 2019, I think. Man, yeah, good times. He says, yeah, they did. Too many people were abusing it. That's the way it always goes. A few crazies ruin it for everybody, you know. And that's reasonable and prudent is a nice idea, but the practice is people are not reasonable or prudent most of the time. Especially when you're talking about speeders, you know, that is a very much open to interpretation kind of rule, and you know, yeah, it's going to be abused. That's unfortunate. And Chad says there's places in Texas that advertise that there are no police jurisdiction. And Lancewell says it's a $5 ticket for doing 100. Interesting. Okay, so I guess it is still kind of a free for all then. That's surprising though. Man. And B. Mitchell said North Dakota was 75 on all interstates. Gotcha. And a speeding ticket was $5. So they made 80, the hard stop, and S is 80 and doesn't care. For South Dakota. Montana is now 80, as everybody thought it was the Autobahn. Gotcha. Okay. Interesting. Thanks for the info. That's enlightening. But it sounds like there's really no penalties. Do they give you points on your license, or is it? Because I mean, you would think they would want to put more money on it just to boost, you know, revenue for the cops if they're pulling you over anyway. Because otherwise, like, why enforce things if you're only charging tiny amounts of money? But he said it was a $5 ticket. Lancewell says it's a carless. It's carless now. So I'm not sure what you mean about that, but so is it? So now they're getting more expensive, I'm guessing. But interesting. Yeah, because I know even like with the one I got in West Virginia, like I was going, he clocked me doing 81 and a 65. But then, you know, whenever they pulled me over, they were like, you know, do you know why I pulled you over? I'm like, yeah, I know I was going a little fast. I apologize. You know, and usually if you're cool with them like that, they're more reasonable too, at least back then. Who knows these days? But, you know, and so he was like, okay, well, yeah, he knocked it down to 5 over, and saved me the points. But with that, there was like a court fee or a like administration fee or something that was like $160. And the speed was, I think it was like $3 for every 5 mile per hour over you went. So he didn't actually save me any money, but he saved me the points, which in the long run does save you money on insurance. So it was still nice, I guess, but definitely it was just them trying to rack up money, you know. But that's interesting. And let me see here. Getting back to the other questions. Don't want to fall too far behind. Oh, actually, thank you so much, Jonah, for a super chat. He says 5th and 6th gen Chevy Camaro SS or S197 S554 Mustang GT. Which is better for a V8 sports car that you can daily under $35,000? So, you know, between all 4 of those, I would definitely go for the newer generation, unless there's something like with styling you really love about the prior generation. But otherwise, between those, in my opinion, it comes down to if daily is really your, you know, if you're looking for like the best comfort, the best practicality, the best livability, Mustang to me is the clear winner there. It has better visibility. You have a slightly bigger back seat. It's just a little more interior space as far as like cubbies and stuff like that. And it's just, in my experience, was just a little easier to live with. And I think comfort, they actually do slightly better as well, in my opinion, in the S550 versus 6th gen Camaro. But 6th gen Camaro is undeniably the better handler, like heads and shoulders above Mustang. Now, you know, if you're going for one of the spruced up ones, you know, like I had the Bullet, you know, Mach 1, Performance Pack 2, Performance Pack 1, that does get closer, but Camaro still just has a better platform. It's just a better, you know, that Alpha chassis is just great. And so, you know, if I was going to be tracking it a lot or doing autocross or just, you know, intense backroads kind of driving, or you just enjoy good handling, you know, for whatever reason, then in that case, I would say, you know, the slight drawbacks to Camaro are not worth giving up the handling. But if you don't need to have the absolute best handling, then I would rather, be in the Mustang. And I mean, that's what I did. You know, I could have had a Camaro for the 4 Mustangs that I bought. Each of those times, the Camaro was an option and was available. And I was actually really close with a Chevy dealer back then too, that, you know, I was like, are you sure you don't want a Camaro? You know, and I mean, they would have rolled out the red carpet and given me a great discount. But I really always loved the Mustang more. And I mean, there's some bias there as well, for sure. I mean, Mustang just, you know, it has always been close to my heart, and I never really had that same tug from the Camaro, you know, on my heart. But, you know, S550 is also just a little more character filled with the powertrain. The Coyote V8 just is a high revving kind of motor. And I think coming out of the BRZ, coming out of, the JDM stuff that I really, kind of was what started my love of cars back in the day. I appreciate high revving engines more than the boatload of torque that you get, which does feel punchier, from a stop in the Camaro. But that motor just, that's always been my complaint. Even like C8 Corvette, it's the same thing. Regular C8, it's a great car, and I mean it's a motor that sounds great. It's a good motor, but it's just, to me, not the most character-filled V8 out there. And Coyote just has that extra zing with, going to 7,500 RPM, and just the character of it's almost like a VTEC sensation. Once you get over 4 or 5 grand, I mean, that last 2,500 RPM, it really rips hard and feels like it's like switching over. I think it might actually be switching over with, cams or something. I mean, it comes alive. And you don't get that excitement. I mean, I think red line on Camaro is maybe 6,500, if that. So it just comes down to preference. But if you just want the boatload of torque and you don't want to have to work a little bit for that power in the upper ends, I mean, it's, you have plenty amount of torque still in the Mustang, but that's really the defining thing for me, and for you, as far as, which do you like better? And so hopefully you can answer those basic, questions of what kind of powertrain you like better, how much you care about having bigger windows and, more space and stuff. But personally, I really love the Mustangs. I mean, both of them are pretty equal as far as reliability goes. They're both pretty equal as far as safety goes. So everything else is mostly equal, I'd say. Tech's pretty comparable. I think the Mustang interior is also nicer. You have like metal switchgear in the S550. Camaro's mostly plastic stuff for the most part, aside from like the little dials to change the climate that go around the air vents. Other than that, Mustang's a little bit of a nicer interior to be in. Seats are a tiny bit more comfortable, in my opinion. So there's some minor stuff, but that's all so minor. So it really comes down to the powertrain, and the visibility and practicality, I think. So hopefully that helps you a little bit. Thanks so much, Jenna, for the super chat. I appreciate it. Thanks also for all the hearts and stuff, everyone, too. And let me see. Also, I see he had some follow-up there. He says, I will admit I like the S197 Mustang. Looks better. Looks like a true Mustang. Also, Challenger SRT8/Scat Pack is an option, or Charger. Challenger's great too. S197 is also, really fun. And if you do like that older look better, they're also really nice dailies. It's just obviously an older interior, not as nice. 5th gen Camaro is also fantastic. Those round headlamps and the very retro interior is really fun. With those, I mean, with the Camaro, it's less of a big difference because, it was still kind of an evolution of the platform. That still, I believe 5th gen still had the independent rear suspension. So it's less of a big deal going from 5th gen Camaro to 6th gen. But when you're going from S197 with the live rear axle in the back to S550, I mean, miles better as far as ride quality. Handling, I think, is a lot better. Now, do you want that, or do you want the muscle car experience? If you do, S197 might be more raw and be actually kind of, the more fun one for you, if that's kind of the vibe you're going for. S197s are great. It just might be a little hard to find a really nice S197 at this point, especially if you have 35 grand to spend. I mean, you can probably find a really pristine example if they're out there. I just don't know how many S197s are, low miles, nice. I feel like basically every S197 has got to be 6-figure mileage at this point, almost, so like you're kind of contending with that a little bit. Same thing, obviously, with 5th gen Camaro, because they're just so old at this point. But if you can find a nice one, absolutely, probably still definitely worth owning, especially those last kind of couple of years there, 2013, 2014. Should be really, really great cars too. As far as Challenger's great. It's the worst handling of the bunch, but also the most practical of the bunch. You have a lot more space in Challenger. Charger, obviously, even better if you want a back seat. But Challenger back seat is totally usable. Best one of the 3. And is, a really comfy car too. Challenger seats are a little firmer. I think Challenger is a little bit better if you're on the larger side, body wise, if you're taller, those kinds of people, I think, really appreciate the extra space you get in Challenger. So, and as a result, I feel like the seats in the Camaro and the Mustang are a little softer and a little more plush. So personally, I like sitting in those more, but, still nice seats for sure. And I mean, Challengers and Chargers are great cruisers. I mean, I've spent, we did these like Road to SEMA things that we did back in 2016 and 2017 and 2018, I think. And we drove all through the desert. We drove from Vegas to LA to Vegas, and through Palm Springs, all this stuff in all the Mopar stuff, Chargers and Challengers back in the day. And I mean, we did hundreds of miles, no issues, loved them, super comfy, no complaints whatsoever. So any of them I think are great. If you do care about safety, I'll just say Challengers the worst as far as that goes, but most people in that buying segment don't care too much, so I won't harp on that. But all good choices. Hopefully that helps you a little bit to have a little bit of direction one way or another. But I see he also says, I don't have money. I'm just dreaming and milking the most out of my parents' 2006 V6 RAV4 for right now. Gotcha. Well, when the time comes, hopefully, someday, you'll be in that position. Hopefully that gives you an idea of, where you'd like to go. So, but this, he says this will help me a few years when I save a little bit. Thanks for your advice. Absolutely. And, thanks so much for the super chat. And let me see. I see in chat says dreams are motivation for action. Absolutely. That's you gotta keep those dreams alive to keep pushing yourself. And let me see here. So getting back to the other stuff we were talking about here earlier, we are getting a little bit further behind here, so I don't want to get too far behind towards the end. So I'm going to probably switch to member only questions here for a few minutes at least, maybe, and maybe come back to some of the non-member ones here later on. So let me see. Where are we here? So I see Lantern says I'm talking about the motorsport games are being canceled, so the Horizon games will continue. Interesting. I hadn't heard all the details. I think I heard something about that being potentially happening, but is that actually for sure that the Forza Motorsport is completely done? Is that completely confirmed? Because that's unfortunate, because there were some real advantages they had over Gran Turismo for sure. But if Gran Turismo is the only one left, then man, yeah, then definitely PS5 is the move. Like, don't even bother with the Xbox at this point, because yeah, there's especially if Forza Horizon is going to be on PS5 too, then there's no point. That's crazy. And I see Greg says, what do you think about my two performance cars? I have a 2007 Trailblazer SS all-wheel drive and an 09 C6 Corvette 6-speed manual. Sounds like a fun garage to me. Two fun vehicles. You got your V8 in all forms. That's awesome. And Michelle says, how are you liking your 17 Pro? Is it better battery life than your 15 Pro? Definitely better battery life, a whole lot better. I mean, because I took it on the drive program with Subaru here, back about a week week and a half ago now. And it did great for all that, being on planes and doing all that stuff. I mean, didn't even get close to, getting as low as my 15 Pro would have gotten. And that was great because, I was filming a lot of the footage that you saw in the Crosstrek hybrid review and the Forza Wilderness review. I did a lot of that filming on the iPhone, and it was a champ for all that. So it was really nice to have the better battery for that. Although I will say, I went to the Apple Store. I just went to the Apple Store today and finally held the iPhone Air in my hand. And I'm like, man, like, this is what I actually would have wanted. If I told the Apple person, I'm like, if they would have put all the cameras on this, I totally would have gone for this, and then just done the MagSafe battery for trips and stuff. But I hope that maybe next year they, like a second generation Air, finally, I don't know if they'll add all three cameras. I really do need all three, so it's going to probably not going to happen for me. But I hope that they add more cameras to the Air, because that's the one huge compromise I can't do, unless maybe if next year I'm not doing car YouTube or something, then maybe I'll be able to downscale or downsize to a phone that's not as overkill on the cameras. But I'm really enjoying the 17 Pro though. And let me see. YH says those heart emojis were my cat walking on the keyboard. Nice. And let me see. YH says, yeah, motorsports video games don't sell except when you want to showcase the graphics of your latest gen console. Gotcha. I mean, I guess that makes sense. Yeah, probably not mass appeal. I mean, I know YouTube track footage doesn't do well either, so it's the same kind of thing. People are just not into it. But it's also even like something Need for Speed, like EA is getting rid of Need for Speed, right? And that's like obviously not track driving, and even that kind of stuff seems like it's just, maybe, I don't know what it is about racing stuff. It's just not as popular as it used to be. But yeah, interesting. And we see, so Lantern says, I have a small dent on the right rear door of my Model Y. I took it to a service center and they wanted $5,500 to fix it. And to add, to get parts, it would be 90 days on the wait list. If you're going to use Tesla for dirt cheap, you should factor in repair costs as they're extremely expensive. Yikes. Yeah. I've heard that. That's been something that's been an issue for a while. I remember even all the issues that TFL had with their Model 3 way back when, getting repair parts and all that kind of stuff. It's not great. I mean, I will say, to give a little bit of slack to Tesla, there's a lot of cars where that's the case, where there's long wait times for waitlist stuff. A lot of stuff is there's still just like some of these supply chains that are a little bit screwed up, and just a lot of stuff where they're just not stocking stuff and not having enough stuff. I don't know what the holdup is with some of it, but I think now we're seeing supply chains get screwed up with tariffs, and we're hearing about. I mean, I don't know if you guys have seen some of these closures and layoffs of some of these suppliers. Suppliers are hurting, so I don't think that situation is going to get any better with having extra spare parts around and stuff. It's going to probably be harder for repairs and all that. So especially with EVs too, it's so iffy that a lot of times they just want to total stuff anyway. So it's crazy that even just a dent on your Model Y is $5,500. That's crazy. And I hope it gets fixed soon for you, because that's no fun. See, Kevin says, I have driven the new Taco and was impressed with the Turbo 4 torque. Sadly, the manual is not available in Canada with the premium trim, so cloth seats, no dual climate, no power in the bed. That's weird, but that sucks. Well, in that case, yeah, I mean, I'd say, especially if you want a truck, Ranger Raptor seems great. I mean, I did the regular Ranger. If you want to hear my thoughts on Rangers in general, I did do a review of that. Yeah, I think Ranger is actually one of my favorite trucks in the segment still. So, yeah, that's probably a good way to go. I'd go that way over Durango personally, but it comes down to, again, what feels better to you. And Wyatt says the whole video game industry and fans are waiting on GTA 6. Yeah, I agree. Everyone is waiting. And Kevin says, I test drove a Ranger Lariat 2.7 and a Ranger Raptor, and it becomes very difficult to justify a Tacoma with hard plastic door panels. Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, the Ranger interior is very nice. And yeah, they did go. I mean, I guess they're trying to, say it's going to be rugged or whatever. But yeah, it would be nice to see some nicer materials, especially like the plastic door pulls, because the rest of the door panel, maybe you're not always touching all that, but you are grabbing the handle every time you get out of the vehicle, and that does feel like really cheap, and that is a sore spot for sure. So yeah, I don't know why they don't invest more in stuff like that, because I mean, I'm guessing they have the margin, so I don't know why they do corner cut. Maybe they think they can get away with it, and it seems like based on the wait lists and the demand and stuff, they can. But maybe there'll come a time where that won't be the case, and maybe they'll up the interior quality. Then we'll see. But Jordan says, should a vehicle that's sold from a private owner for sale in a front lawn be required to provide a Carfax document on that vehicle, or is that government overreach or something with the VIN? No, I think that comes down to the buyer. I mean, the buyer needs to do their due diligence in any kind of transaction. That comes down to, a lot of people even will go and get an inspection done. You want to make sure you get that stuff done. But I mean, if someone doesn't care, I mean, I think at this point, everyone knows what a Carfax is for the most part. I mean, sure, there's a few people that don't, but it's been around for so long. If you're going into a car purchase and you're not doing any research or any background stuff on it, like, I don't really have any sympathy for you, because you're going into it blind, and it's going to be what it's going to be. So and Carfaxes aren't expensive either. I mean, it's like $25. It's worth it, if it's a car you're serious about. And I think that's definitely worth to have that peace of mind. And Chad says, I saw on another channel where they were basically reviewing the Porsche Experience Center in Toronto. Seems like it'd be super cool, and for a random one-off experience, not too crazy expensive. Interesting. Yeah, were they doing a delivery there, or was it just like going there to hang out? And I think you can actually buy like packages that, do some of the track stuff and things like that, even if you're not an owner, I think. But yeah, Porsche Experience Center seems really cool. Every time I fly into Atlanta, you can see them doing their laps at the Atlanta version of that, because it's right next to the airport. Yeah, it seems fun. I've never experienced any of that before, but I have to imagine it's pretty fun. I did the I did the Ferrari experience in Maranello, with their driving education kind of program, where, we were in the 296s, and we're, learning all the different things as far as, skid pad, a wet skid pad and catching slides and all that kind of stuff. So I can imagine, the Porsche's equally as fun, but yeah, so I've done something like that. We actually did one way back when. Actually, it was a collaboration with Project Cars 2 way back when, with McLaren, did the 570S at Sonoma for a half day, kind of doing something like that. But I'd love to do Porsche at some point too. And Lance Watt says, next time you're at the self-checkout, ask when you'll be getting your W-2. Right. And why so I'm not going to read your comment just to keep this family friendly, but that's pretty funny. And Lantern says, I'm considering buying the PlayStation 6 whenever it comes out, because with the Motorsport game gone, the Horizon games and Gran Turismo will be on PlayStation. Right. Yeah, that sounds like the move. And Kevin says, I wish there was a Ranger ST with the manual transmission from the Dark Horse. That'd be fun. Yeah, I mean, I feel like, but I guess Tacoma not selling super well with the manual probably shows all the other car companies that they shouldn't bother with it. But it'd be fun, especially for like a company that wants to stand out, like Nissan, maybe, for Frontier, bring that back. I think that could be a nice way to differentiate. But yeah, I mean, I'd love to see a Dark Horse Tremec manual and a Ranger. That'd be great. And Wyatt says Japan is the epitome of following rules. Absolutely, which is why I desperately want to go to Japan, because I feel like they're my people. I'm very much a rule follower in a lot of ways, and I think I'd really get along, because the Japanese just seem so gracious and just every time there's like a car show in Japan, or there's like some extra event that people get invited to, I am always so jealous. Japan's always been the number one place in the world I've been desperate to go to, and I've never made it, but hopefully someday. Keep my fingers crossed. Let me see. So we had all of our discussion about the speed limits here. Let me see. So Raphael though says, when he was in Michigan, I saw signs saying $1,000 fine for speeding. I made sure everyone was passing me. Yeah, Michigan doesn't mess around. Because there was I think a famous story, or it was like an article where a journalist was given a really heavy fine in Michigan. It's not as bad as Virginia. Virginia will actually throw you in jail. And I mean, that actually happened to a journalist too. And I think it was actually a Camaro drive program. I think it was for ZL1 or something like that. Might have been 5th gen ZL1. I don't remember exactly, but where someone actually did get like thrown in jail for a night for speeding. So for anyone who's unaware, if you don't know about Virginia, I mean, they are crazy. So that is a place you definitely do not want to go over the speed limit. I mean, you can go a few miles per hour, but you do not want to go fast in Virginia, which is crazy, because every time I cross into Northern Virginia, everyone drives like a lunatic. And I don't know, if everyone's doing jail time or what the deal is. I mean, they can't pull everybody over, I guess, but man, it's like some of those most chaotic driving around the DC Beltway, at least back in the day. I don't know what it's like these days, but a couple of years ago, it was just, man, nothing raises my blood pressure faster than driving on the DC Beltway. In Northern Virginia, by extension, is most of the time pretty stressful too. But anyway, let me see. Where were we? Wyatt says 6th gen SS. I just want to give you this pony, Chevy. Yeah, Wyatt will definitely tell you Mustang every time in his opinion. Let me see. A says, so if I fuel my car with jet fuel, will it last longer or faster? Definitely not. Mike says, does it surprise you GM still hasn't made Corvette SUVs or SUVs in general based on the Alpha platform? Yeah, I don't know about the Alpha platform. I think that's probably going to phase out with CT5 and CT4. Although, I don't know if GM's going to stick to that, because we're seeing, others where they're like, hey, we'll just kind of keep our old car around for a little while because we don't have to worry about cafe stuff for a while. And if the stuff's already in production and you don't need that factory, we may see them extend CT5 and CT4 for a little while longer. I believe 2026 was supposed to be the end, was right. Like, I don't think we've had that officially confirmed, but I think that's kind of what all the rumors have suggested. And so, I know it seems like there was that one leak of a Cadillac electric sedan that essentially looks like the Optic, just in, sedan form. And that would be coming to replace those, and maybe that'll still come, but maybe they'll give people the choice of having the gas still for a few more years. We'll have to see. But Cadillac's killing it with their EVs, and sales are killing it too. So I mean, again, we'll see if that changes, but they might not be inclined to extend that, but we may see that. But as far as, otherwise, if that doesn't stick around, then I don't think there's any reason for them to use Alpha platform. I mean, it's a great platform, but they'll probably try, especially for an SUV, they'll want to put it on something probably a little bit more heavy duty. And so, I mean, there's always the rumors about Corvette SUVs and if that's going to happen. I don't know. I guess it sounds like maybe Camaro is more imminent, with the rumors of that potentially either being a sedan or an SUV. If that goes SUV, they'll probably have to wait and see how that goes. Unless they're fully committed, then maybe they'll just roll them both out back to back. But, they may test the waters with Camaro first and then go from there. I don't know. We'll have to see what ends up happening. But I don't even know if that's happening, honestly. So we'll see. SCB Mitchell says, once you go S550, you don't go back. Maybe we'll see. But I mean, there have been some people, I think, that, soured on Mustang and went for Camaro. Actually, especially whenever there was the whole typewriter tick thing and people were, lemon longing their 2018s and stuff. There were some people I know who went to Camaro, and even some that went to Challenger, just because they just lost faith in Ford at that point. But yeah, I think S550s are still fantastic. And Tastebud said, got to cut up with an M2 and an Aston Martin today on the tollway. Smoked the M2 and the Z and just vibed with the Aston mobbing at insane legal speeds. Nice. Well, that's awesome, man. Yeah, rolling with an Aston Martin is always fun. That's really, really cool. And glad you had some fun there. And let me see. So Jordan says, Chevy Volt owners 2011 to 2017 that are still on the road should have free 2026 upgrades that are equivalent to the new Bolt technology. If not, are those owners just data patsies for Chevy? Well, if you're talking about Bolt, maybe, so if you're talking about Volt, I mean, the thing is, any car gets outdated, and you're buying it knowing you're going to eventually have something that's outdated. So I don't think there's any obligation to update anybody. It's, and also, like, there's some companies like Volvo, they're updating the infotainment on some of their older stuff, which they don't have to do for sure, but they're doing it just to be nice, I guess. But that's really rare. And so there's no need for that. I mean, everyone understands that car technology evolves and improves, and that's why people buy the new version, and that's why the old versions depreciate. If it had never gone down, then it would have held its value. If it was always going to, if there was never going to be any advancements, then you'd probably see those, hold their value really well. But they depreciate because, people know they're getting something that's a little bit old, and that there's newer and better stuff out there. Let me see. Jonah says he likes the new iPhones as a diehard Android user. I'm on my second Pixel phone and I'm disappointed. Interesting. Yeah, there's always some cool stuff. I mean, like, if I wasn't in the Apple ecosystem and I didn't need to have a great camera, I would probably just have the new Motorola Razr, because I desperately love a flip phone like that. I really want a flip phone like that. I'm so disappointed. It sounds like the new iPhone Fold next year is going to be the more, portfolio kind of thing instead, because I don't need an iPad in my pocket. I would just like to have a smaller phone in my pocket. And if it was iPad Air thinness, but it folded over on itself, that would be like perfect phone for me. But yeah, so I mean, I love all the foldables that everyone else is doing. It's just, Apple's doing the typical thing where they're not the first for anything usually, but they, try and perfect it or make it better. And we'll see if they do or not. But I'm hoping someday that we have a vertical flip iPhone. That would be nice. And let me see. Lantern says the next gen Xbox has been announced. It can play both Xbox games and Steam games. They're trying to make it more like a PC. However, I don't think it's going to be enough. Yeah, because I feel like any PC gamer, I mean, maybe there still PC exclusives. I feel like that's not really much of a thing anymore. But even if there are, um, I feel like PC gamers are a whole different breed, and there is no crossover there. I feel like it's like if you're a PC gamer, like you're a PC gamer, and that's it. And you wouldn't be like, oh, well, I'll just buy an Xbox because it can do some of the same stuff. I don't know. Because I feel like it's way more intense with the rigs that these people build and stuff. Yeah, I don't know. But good luck to them. It's surprising. I really thought that Xbox was kind of pulling ahead on PlayStation back in the day. And like I was a defector. I had PS2, and then when it came time for my next console back then, I went for Xbox 360 and did that, and never looked back. I was on the Xboxes, ever since. But now I'm feeling the pull too. I'm like, man, like I'm nostalgic for PlayStation, and it sounds like they have great stuff. Again, good lineup of games and all that. And I don't know. I've read PS6 is coming possibly by late 2027 now. Originally it was maybe 2028, but so that's another thing too, with since I'm so far behind on games, I'll probably see all these awesome games next year that I want to play, but then I'll probably be like, well, I might as well, if I'm going to spend a crap load of money on a console, which I don't know if I even will, but if I do, might as well probably just wait for PS6, just give it another year, and then and then just go for everything and do a giant haul. I don't know, we'll see. Who knows? I don't know if I'm even ever going to have time to play games. We'll see what ends up happening in the world and on the channel and all that. But let me see. B. Mitchell says Porsche HQ and the Experience Center in Atlanta is where the Ford assembly plant used to be. Really? I didn't know that. That's cool. I had no idea there was a Ford assembly plant there. That's cool. Thanks for the info. He says Jeep still has a decent take rate on manuals in Wrangler and Gladiator to a lesser extent. I thought Gladiator got rid of the manual. Is it still a thing? I thought they just got rid of it a year or two ago. I reviewed a manual Gladiator. It was probably honestly one of the worst driving experiences I've had in modern times. Just the gearing is horrible. It's so bad. It was a dog. I mean, you had to really wring that thing. I was beating the snot out of that thing all week, just like do usual driving. Maybe some people like driving like that. Just for me, it was one of the few manuals where I was really like, I just wish I was in an automatic. So I don't know. Gladiator manual, I don't love it. I guess the Wrangler is probably not much better. I've never driven a manual Wrangler, I don't think, which is probably, kind of surprising, but I don't think I actually have, at least not for any decent length of time. But if it's the same as it is in the Gladiator, they can have it. I don't know. I'm glad they offered for those who do want it. But yeah, even Bronco offers it. I haven't driven that 7-speed in the Bronco, but that'd be cool to try. I hope that's better. At least you got an extra gear to work with. But man, Gladiator is not a good manual experience in my opinion. And Tacoma's not amazing, but it's certainly better than Gladiator in my opinion. And Robert, thanks for stopping by. And G-Boy says going over 80 in Virginia is automatic reckless ticket. Yikes. Yeah. So you do not mess around in Virginia, that's for sure. And B. Mitchell said 20 mile per hour over the limit in Kansas means an immediate trip to the local magistrate. Wow. Okay. So Kansas too. I'm surprised that Kansas is like that. That's nuts. And Chad says, I had to go to a show. I had to go show up for a court date in New Orleans for passing an unmarked going 30 over the speed limit in an almost empty interstate. He thought I was running. I was cruising. That's crazy. Well, sorry you had to go through that. Hopefully it was all right in the end there. But man, that's probably terrifying to have to do. And Lantern says, I saw a video online where a kid took a Tesla Model 3 to street takeover. All you can hear are the tires squealing and the driver showing off his skills of driving in circles. Yeah, which, I don't know if that takes a whole lot of skill, especially the way some of these takeovers, they don't actually have any skill because they're knocking out people and ramming into cars and just generally not even understanding how to drive in a circle correctly. But yeah, not a fan of takeovers personally. But let me see. Jordan says Stellantis is in management musical chairs. Ford stuck in possible EV futuristic mode. One or both joined forces with Toyota. Toyota is king of the hybrids and years of reliability with the Prius. I don't think you'll probably see any joining there. I mean, because Ford has their own hybrid system, they've already had for years, and they can innovate that. That's no problem for them. And as far as Stellantis, they're doing their own hybrid stuff. We see it in the new Cherokee coming out here. They can just pull all their hybrid stuff from Europe, because Europe's got a bunch of hybrids, and they can kind of integrate that tech into North American stuff here. So I think both of them are okay. Now, will it be as good as Toyota hybrid for either of them? Probably not. I think Ford hybrid is really good, though. I mean, we see, all the Ford Escape hybrid taxis that have done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of miles without any, issues, really. So, I mean, I would have really full faith in a Ford hybrid system as well. I think Maverick's probably going to be great, and probably has shown itself to be pretty good, I'm assuming, so far. So I have no problem with Ford hybrids from a reliability standpoint. So Stellantis, though, I mean, they have other, again, issues like I talked about earlier with, dropping the EVs, and, just they seem very short-sighted with some of these decisions. But hey, everyone's going to play it differently, and, we'll see who comes out on the right side of things. But I think Toyota, they've really played everything perfectly, like I've said in the past, with just having something for everyone and doing really good executions of basically everything that they do. BZ definitely, when it was BZ4X, wasn't the best in the segment by any means, but I think they made a lot of great improvements. Still not the best in my opinion, but a lot of good improvements here for 26. And, I reviewed that back in the summer. But I think that they're, all these other EVs they have coming will be great too. And that'll really give them a really fleshed out lineup of, a good amount of choice in every single kind of powertrain. So I think Toyota's positioned about as perfect as you can be here for the next few years, in my opinion, at least, while also, keeping their reputation for people who are paying attention to, like, who actually cares about the environment, who actually, believes the things they've been saying for the past few years. And I think Toyota can, again, keep those EVs, hopefully, and have all the other stuff that's also, drastically reducing emissions. So it's really great to see that from them, and see them continuing to, keep the electrification going. Jordan says, what about a Tesla or Toyota RAV4 prototype? Yeah, I don't think anyone wants to get anywhere near a Tesla right now. I mean, no one wants all the baggage of Elon Musk, that's for sure. And I also think, like, depending, we saw a glimpse of it earlier this year, if Elon doesn't play his cards right, I mean, the product is, pretty good, I'd say, at least as far as the refreshes for Model 3 and Model Y. People seem to really be happy with those. But, it's still a stale car. And for some people, that's okay. Clearly, they're still selling a decent amount of them. But with S and with the X and, Cybertruck, it's really a struggle. And I think that some companies are kind of seeing a little bit of blood in the water there, where, the sharks are starting to circle. And, if Tesla doesn't really get their act together soon, or if Elon just, goes off the deep end again, I guess he's never really stopped, but, at least he's not actively meddling in politics at the current moment. But if that gets worse in any of those areas, I think, that combined with stale product is not a good recipe for success. You can only, run a car for so long before, eventually you're going to have to do something new. And there's nothing new on the horizon. The affordable Tesla is just going to be a stripped down Model Y, I think, right? So there's no, all the R&D work. They could have had a awesome new second gen platform for X and S. They wasted their time on Cybertruck instead. And I don't think that gamble's going to play off for them. They're going to probably be behind. And now they're facing the headwinds of, again, an anti-EV, policy and administration. It's not going to help them. And, it's going to really test, again, everyone's cashed in, everyone got their deals. And I think you're going to see Tesla drop off the sales. I mean, I think they just had their worst sales ever for the last quarter anyway, even with all of the fantastic deals, which I think just is a Tesla thing, because everyone else was just, booming. But, I think Tesla's in for some rough waters, which is insane that, their stock continues to skyrocket despite every indicator saying it should be going the exact opposite way. You still got, which shows you how the stock market is so detached from reality. It's just ridiculous. But, the stock keeps on rising. It's still worth, way more than Ford and GM and all these giants. Um, and it's just completely it's in imaginary land as far as Tesla stock. It's just crazy. I'd short it, but there's no rational thoughts there as far as how the stock market is moving on Tesla stock. So it's not even something you could reliably predict when it's going to collapse. But I think it will collapse someday because it's crazy. But anyway, Jordan, thank you for a super chat. He says a Lucid and Toyota EV car under 20 grand, reset the game. I mean, if you could have Lucid efficiency. And if Lucid didn't want to go cheap and they were willing to partner with Toyota, that'd be great. I mean, Lucid has, at least they were partnering with Aston. And I don't know if Aston Martin's still going to go through with that or not. Because I thought I heard that was maybe on the back burner or something. I don't know. But, so Lucid was going to sell their tech to Aston, which I think would be fantastic for Aston and would hopefully give, Lucid some money that they need too. But if they could tie up with a big company like Toyota and do something like that, I think that'd be really cool. I've always said if Lucid does end up failing, they absolutely should be a top tier supplier because they still are doing the best electric motors in the game, like hands down, from efficiency and just the construction and everything just seems like it's really next gen. And yeah, so if nothing else, they should sell those motors and, milk that for as much as they can, even if the cars, don't make it. But I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen if Gravity's done well or not, but that's one where I think there shouldn't be too much of an effect because of the end of the credit. I mean, they've certainly moved more heirs as a result of the credits. But I think a lot of the people that are maybe, bored with their Rivian R1S after a few years that are now going into Lucid Gravity, like those people don't care about the deals really too much. So hopefully Lucid's kind of higher end positioning will isolate them a little bit from the fallout of, the dropping EV sales here for, the foreseeable future. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see those kinds of tie-ups. It'll be fun, Jordan. Thank you so much for the super chat. Also, B. Mitchell says a Ford's hardware system that's been around about as long as Toyota's, right? Lantern says, what do you think of Nissan canceling the Aria? I sat in one at the auto show and I really liked it. I love the secret storage solutions. It is a straight out of a Bond car. Yeah, it's really cool with the way they did the interior. I mean, tons of interior space. And yeah, my big gripe with Aria is I just didn't love the way that it drove. The handling just felt kind of disconnected, and the brake pedal just was like really wonky. And at least in the one that I had for a week, it just wasn't. It was always inconsistent with how much braking I needed to do to get the same level of actual braking done. It just, it was always a guessing game. Your brake pedal should not be a guessing game ever. But I mean, they're not the only ones. Mercedes also has a weird brake pedal with their EVs. And that's also part of why, like when we were shopping, for the Lyric for Beth, she's a big Mercedes fan, but she's like, I don't want to do that brake pedal because she tested the EQS that we had, even EQS SUV that I had for a week. And she was like, yeah, I hate this. Like, it just does not, she didn't like the way it drove. So that was my issue with Aria. If you like Aria, I mean, I guess at this point, again, the ship has sailed on the tax credit and all that. But, hopefully people are enjoying them. And hopefully the one I had was just a dud and the brake pedal is actually better in the cars now. But it's sad that they got rid of Aria. I think, it is a little bit of a strange choice. I mean, you do have Leaf, which certainly would cannibalize some of those sales, especially the cheaper Aria. But I think this would have been a good opportunity to push Aria a little up market, not a lot, but if Leaf goes to, what is it, mid to high 30s, I think for the top versions, you have Aria starting at 40. It is more space than a Leaf, and you have more power. You have the bigger battery. I think that it made sense to keep around. So I'm not sure why Aria's dropping, and I think it's only North America. I think the rest of the world is continuing with Aria. I could be wrong on that, but I don't know. It is kind of strange. The only other thing I can think of is, they just want to focus on real, like, intensely value-oriented cars, because that's really what I've been hearing from Nissan a lot. Outside of Armada, that's been the story with New Sentra is we didn't go crazy on the powertrain because value. Leaf, it's all about, again, value. Everything really they're doing now is, trying to really hone in on that, which I think is absolutely, again, if you're, reading in between the lines here of, how things are going to go in the future, it's probably a good thing to focus on value and try to keep prices low. If we're teeing up for another recession, like you need to make sure that you have those affordable cars, because that's the stuff that really thrived in the last recession. So, I think Nissan's smart to do that, but it is kind of a surprise that Aria is already dropping out of the American market, and I'm sad because I think with a refresh and some improvements, I think it would be even better, because again, they nailed the basics, the interior, the space, the range and stuff was fine. I think especially whenever they got cheap again, people are getting them for $200 a month. When you're getting it for that cheap, again, a lot of those things you can live with, and that becomes less of an issue. So I think, I don't know why they did that or what the rationale was, but it's unfortunate. I'm kind of bummed. But let me see. Jordan says Lincoln is on the penny and was about freedom. Would it make sense for a true affordable EV hybrid ICE vehicle for all Americans? Truly affordable, 20 grand to start, safety features included. So as far as, I'm not sure the tie-in with a penny there, but as far as just an affordable vehicle like that, I think the more cheap vehicles out there, the better. I think, again, that's absolutely imperative, because we have an affordability crisis in so many ways right now in this country. So I wish we'd see more of that, and I hope that companies pivot to that a little bit more once they start to see more obvious signs that they need to be in that kind of a price point. I hope that we see some more base models come back, some more stripped down models come back, but I think it's also hard to do because that stuff typically needs to be small, and with every other person out there buying an F-150 every other day, like it's a valid point. How do you feel safe driving a Nissan Versa when you're surrounded by F-150s? A lot of people feel uncomfortable, and I don't blame them. I kind of do too. So that's kind of what you're up against, but that's just the culture of America, especially now. It's become more truck heavy than ever and SUV heavy than ever. So it's hard. I think this is why Chevy is kind of, cracked the egg as best as you possibly can with Trax. Trax is 22.5 grand or whatever to start. It's, you sit up high, you have a lot of space in the back seat, you have a lot of trunk space, which is, again, very important for that segment and stuff, but you have a low price, and you have a powertrain that's actually pretty good for the money and stuff. It's a good little car, and I think that's why Trax sells 200,000 units a year, because that's about as close as you can get to a 20 grand thing that still feels safe and substantial and practical and livable and all that. So I think Chevy's doing that better than everybody, and I think Chevy for a long time has honestly done affordable vehicles better than a lot of car companies. Just from, again, maybe not the most reliable, but you always paid a price premium. You look back even to the 80s and the 90s, the Hondas, the Toyotas were always more expensive than the Chevys, and you could argue you get what you pay for, but again, with proper care and maintenance, I've seen Cavaliers that are, well into the 6-figure mileage range. And, it's definitely something that's possible. So, I love that Chevy has always kind of had a passion for that. It's one of the things where I really, I love going to bat for Chevy when it comes to Trax and stuff like that, because it's like, they get it. They understand. And then I'm pulling my hair out when I'm talking to, Honda or Subaru or any of these. We're like, oh, well, we're just dropping base models because, we have to add this extra equipment. We just don't think it's worth it. It's like, find a way to bring the price point down instead of just giving up on base trims like so many of them do. So, I think Chevy and GM are really good about that. And let me see here. So Lee's Restoration Station says, are we past the point of no return with cool car news? We had such a crazy decade, and the last 3 years have been predictable. Yeah, we have been very much spoiled. And I think it just comes down to what people are interested in. To me, I think there's been a lot of crazy stuff in the past 3 years. We see these crazy fast EVs, but a lot of enthusiasts just are not into that. 1,000 horsepower, just no one bats an eye at that anymore, and no one cares. There's a new Porsche Taycan that does 0 to 60 in 2.2 seconds or whatever. Nobody seems to care. No one pays attention to it. I reviewed the Audi RS e-tron GT 2 or 3 years ago now. I mean, that thing even back then had like 780 horsepower. I think it was one of the craziest reactions I've ever had. One of the fastest cars I've ever driven in a straight line, acceleration wise. It's got like maybe 10,000 views. Like no one watched it, no one gave a crap. And that's kind of the thing is it is in the traditional sense of the word. It hasn't stopped. We still have, evolving horsepower. We have evolving, everything's improving, everything's progressing and getting faster, but it's not being done in the way that most enthusiasts want it to be done in. And as a result, it's just all falling on deaf ears. And so, it makes it tough because it's like, okay, where do you go from here? Do you just completely abandon that and then just, start to do, cartwheels for the next 500 horsepower gas powered thing that's way slower, but it seems like that's, everyone, we're seeing this with the charger community, all the charger guys went from, oh, I'm going to be the fastest thing on the street to now, oh, it's about the experience. It's about the sound. I don't care that I'm slower than the electric version. I just want the sound. I just want the experience. Blah, blah, blah. And they're saying all the same excuses like manual drivers said for years. I just want the experience. And I mean, there's valid points there. I don't disagree. The experience is absolutely important. And if that experience is preferable to you, then yeah, but it's just so funny that people who were obsessed with winning and, beating people at the drag strip and stuff, now they don't have a competitive bone in their body. They don't care. They're fine to lose to the electric charger over and over again at every single red light, every single drag strip. And so I think it's just, there's just a shift there. And I think, we saw this early signs of this with even like the supercar crowd and all of that. But I think, we're starting to see that a lot more with regular sports cars too, where people are like, I want something simple. I want something back to basics. And I don't need, 1,000 horsepower. I don't care about that. I just want something that, gives me the fizz that I'm looking for. And so, so I think we do have exciting car news. It's just not the excitement people are after. So if you're looking for exciting gas car news, I mean, you'll probably get some of that here for the next few years. I'm sure we'll see some announcement of, Dodge doing donuts in a field with a new Hellcat powered Charger with, doing a Dukes of Hazzard redo or something. I don't know. They're going to go full redneck with Charger, I'm sure. So we'll probably see more of that. So there'll be there. I think, you have a good chance, for the rest of this administration to see more of that, traditional kind of announcements, maybe probably not a whole lot. I think Dodge is going to be one of the few that's going to act like there's no tomorrow and just cash in on this as best they can and see how long they can ride it for before they have to, again, start becoming a company that, is a global car company that has to worry about emissions and all that. But, so, I mean, but you can see that from others, I'm expecting Ford will come out with more V8 stuff too, because they have the V8s. Why not? And I think companies will take advantage of that. Absolutely. So I think you'll see more exciting car news in that regard for, a few years here. And then, maybe by 2029 it'll end. We'll see again what happens politically as far as whether things end or not. But I think that's you'll hopefully have some exciting stuff if that's the kind of stuff you're into. And Jordan, thank you so much for a super chat. He says car enthusiasts only care about red light races. Some do. Obviously, there's a lot that don't. Everyone's different, but that segment of muscle car buyers, oftentimes that's the thing that they care about is drag strips, red lights, stuff like that. But let me see. And see, Lantern Tales is signing off here for the night, and we'll be signing off here pretty soon as well. But let me see. So Lee's also says there's a bit of bias with luxury vehicles. The owners are able to afford and will most likely be keep doing extraordinary maintenance. Subaru is a car for everyone. True. But we see this with, again, Toyota and Honda and companies like that, where people buy those with the idea of reliability and the understanding that to get that reliability, it involves some care. And so, and honestly, I think with luxury vehicles, you see the exact opposite, in my opinion. You see unreliability with luxury vehicles. They're able to maybe afford extraordinary maintenance, but most of them never bother with that because they're always leased. I mean, a large majority of those luxury vehicles are all lease specials. A lot of these people that have that kind of money, they don't want to be in an old car. They flip every few years, and a lease is great for that. So they trash them. They don't care about the maintenance, as long as they fall within the rules of what the lease mandates. They'll just eke by and do this stuff late and not care one bit because it's a rental car. They don't care. I saw so much of that all of my years at the BMW, Audi, Porsche dealer I was at as a detailer. People just completely trashed those leases and just they didn't care because they just that's just they didn't enjoy their car enough to care for it, I guess. But yeah, it's kind of interesting. But I think that's part of why you see a lot of unreliable Audis and BMWs and Mercedes, because a lot of times that stuff doesn't get done very well. I mean, some of them do, and I think those are the ones that go high miles, but just so many of them release specials. And let me see here. So Jordan says it could be affordable under the Lincoln brand. Oh, I gotcha. Okay. So I don't see, but Lincoln's all about luxury, so I don't think Lincoln would ever do anything cheap. But as far as the Lincoln Penny, I mean, I understand the historical tie, but the branding of what Lincoln stands for now for the car company, is going to be more powerful. So I don't think they'll ever do a cheap Lincoln. And let me see. Chad says when IHS looks at the safety of the car because of its headlights, they need to pay attention to what they do to other drivers. Some of the new ones are blinding. Yeah, I think that is part of the headlight test. Is I can't remember. They have like a range where they make sure that the side is illuminated well. But I think what they focus on is glare for oncoming drivers. So if it's like a super precise laser that's still zapping you in the eyes, like that would probably be better scoring, but the IHS does take points off for glare. So if the headlight design is just such that it just is a giant lantern essentially, and kind of is a little bit more distracting than a more subtle light that is providing good light but isn't being this giant thing, I think that's kind of what they're trying to nudge car companies into that direction of having a little bit less there for the light. But yeah, I think I absolutely need to focus. I mean, and that's part of the problem with that is just our light laws here in America still are just based on stupid 1970s crap, that hasn't been updated and it hasn't evolved. So as a result, that's why we can't get all the cool, lights that Audi has in Europe and stuff. They have, I mean, intelligently, super intelligent lights that are able to, sense a car coming and dim only certain parts of the road, and basically do it perfectly so that the oncoming driver never even gets light in their eyes. And I mean, their headlights can even project like warning signs on the ground and, give a crosswalk projected for pedestrians, so the pedestrian knows that the car is seeing that and stopping. I mean, they do all kinds of wild stuff over in Europe with headlights, and we can't get any of it because again, our stuff is so outdated and old. And Chad says, I missed the last chat and we'll probably miss next Sunday. So I'm glad I was here for this one. I love your content and sometimes just listen to the chats that I missed like a podcast. Well, I appreciate that. And I'm glad you enjoy it. And thanks so much for stopping by here tonight. And yeah, the podcast thing is great, especially if you have YouTube Premium, then you can, do that. Just have it on as audio, and that's great because then you can, if you want to listen to me babble for 2 hours, you're able to do that without having to sit here and watch me talk. So, yeah. And Kevin says, don't read this on air, but okay, I will read silently here. So he says, I don't think you've ever reviewed a PP2, but if you're ever near Ottawa, or I'm in PA, maybe a used review. Yeah, I'd love to review a PP2. Just to be fun to get into a Mustang again too, just selfishly. So appreciate the offer. Send me an email, Kevin, if you'd like. There's all the contact info in the description there. And I'll add it to my list. And if you do happen to be in PA, or if I'm ever up that way, I do want to do a new Canada trip at some point. I'd love to come visit. So we'll see if I can make it up there. But if not, yeah, if you're ever in PA, I'm only 4 hours from Toronto, honestly, here in Pittsburgh. So if you ever want to come down, I mean, right now, I don't blame you for not wanting to come down. Keep your distance for your own safety. But if you do ever come down in the future, definitely send me a message and maybe we can work something out. And let me see. Lee says, I love an EV, but it's the strict right to repair issues are an issue for myself. I'll be picking up a full-sized EV pickup for my business eventually. My customers hate EVs in an irrational way. Yeah, it's very much still a highly politicized thing, unfortunately. The right to repair thing, I mean, that is, any of these modern vehicles, even some of the gas ones where they're just, so computer heavy, there's less to fix. And that is going to be a concern because it's not something you can, wrench under the hood for and fix on your own. So, but yeah, that seems like even if, by some crazy chance we didn't go into an EV future, it's everything's getting so computerized that there will still be some mechanical components, but if all those mechanical components that you can swap on your own have a computer algorithm behind it that's so complicated, you still have to, have software and have to, do flashes and fix things. It's just you become more of a, software engineer than you do an actual mechanic, even with some of this gas stuff these days. So hopefully some stuff, maybe there'll be future computer stuff that can manage that better. Maybe AI can do some of those back behind the scenes kind of stuff, for that to fix some of those things. I don't know, but yeah, I the right to repair is very important. I agree. That's going to be something that it seems like we're going to be losing no matter what. But I think that will give older cars some certain appeal for a long, long time. And I think that'll keep a lot of stuff on the road longer than we have seen in the past, because there'll be people that, just want to be able to fix their car without going to the dealer. And, we might have a kind of pseudo Cuba kind of situation going on with just like a lot of people keeping old cars running for a long time, even if they can't get newer stuff that's like that, and just kind of really maximize those old cars more than we used to see. And I see HPL Vids. Thanks so much for being a member for 3 years now. I really appreciate that. He says, by the way, my name used to be Dom Farrell. Okay, so you just changed your username. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for stopping by, Dom. Hope you're doing well. And I really appreciate all the support for 3 years now. Really means a lot. And so we've, I think, pretty much reached the end here. I think, let me see. I see it's Jordan says with Toyota's reliability history, I think Ford and GM should partner with Toyota. It won't be anti-American. No, I think it'd be great to see more companies partner up. I think we will see some consolidation as we have these, rough times ahead, as far as, again, companies that are either not able to make the EV transition as well as some others, or, people that maybe lose out a lot in the next couple of years here, or maybe, do a quick partnership to get by until the 2030s, if everything is so highly favoring gas. We'll see. There could be some surprises there. It'll be interesting to see. So I see Lee says he listens to these while he's cleaning his shop on YouTube Premium. That's awesome. Well, yeah, I'm so glad you guys are able to do that. And I see COVID-19 vaccine salesman is sending us out here with a Canadian anthem. Right on. You have my support once again. And HPL also says, or Dom says, good to see you. Could you remind me about the Hyundai potentially finding a workaround for the tax breaks? That was only Ford and GM. Hyundai's not doing that, but Hyundai is just discounting everything a ton, or at least Ioniq 5. I'm assuming the other EVs probably will get that too. But Ioniq 5, it's between like almost $8,000 to $10,000 almost of discounts on Ioniq 5. They're just now putting on the 2026 is just regular, not an incentive. Just the pricing has been adjusted. So Ioniq 5 is still going to be a great seller, I think, and still going to be a really good deal. Arguably, possibly one of the best deals out there, because it's getting close to like Equinox EV pricing with 800 volt platform, super fast charging that the others can't match. Great car. I still love Ioniq 5. So yeah, that's really the only one, but I don't think there's any other workarounds other than the Ford and GM one, which may or may not actually be super effective. We'll see. And Jordan says, thanks, Matt. See you Wednesday. Yeah, I think so. We'll see. I know, the viewership has been lower for some of these lives recently, and I think we're just, again, up against this time of year is kind of tough. So I think I'll do Wednesday. I may drop the Wednesdays eventually, though, depending on if they, get to be too much of a ghost town. But I think, this Wednesday I should be able to do it. So I'll see you guys then. I see Decepticon saying I'm back in the house. Yep, we're wrapping up here. Apologies if you missed it at Decepticon, but definitely go back and watch it later if you want. Had some good conversations here tonight, I think. And I see also a salesperson says, how good is the 2025 Camry? It seems like such a no-brainer, and it's at the top of my list for a next car. Camry's great. It comes down to what you want. I think it's, if you're looking for a nice blend of sporty with the hybrid and great reliability, obviously Camry is really good. Personally, I think I like the Accord powertrain slightly better, and I like the comfort of Accord slightly better. But I wouldn't recommend getting an Accord now because it sounds like the 2026 refresh should be coming. I think it's already out in like China and other places. It's just like a sportier front bumper, and I think a slight improvement on the interior. So maybe it's not worth waiting for. I don't know. But, I do like Accord. I think Accord drives slightly better in my opinion. But if you need all-wheel drive, obviously Camry is great. But I really like Sonata too. Sonata's really well done now. K5 is a good value. They're all really good at this point. I mean, the last survivors here in the sedan segment they're all really, really good. But Camry's great. I absolutely love Camry. It's really fun with the all-wheel drive too, and it boosts you out of the corner with that little electric motor in the back. I had a lot of fun. If you watched my week with the Camry, I did last year, I had a lot of fun with it. Salesperson says Honda cars are so expensive now is what kills me with them. They do have a price premium. So if the premium is not worth it to you, and I can totally see why it wouldn't be, because the Camry, is very, very similar with the new interior being very comfy and stuff. If that's the case, if there's a significant premium for the Honda over the Toyota, then definitely go for the Camry. Yeah, between those two. See Jordan thinks December will be a surge. Possibly. We'll see what happens. The rest of this year is going to be interesting. We'll just wait and see how it all plays out. But I don't know. I don't know what'll be surging in December. We'll see. But anyway, thanks so much, everyone. I see Ryan saying having a good night, and Lee as well. So thank you all so much for watching. Hope you have a great week here. And stay tuned for some more good stuff here. I'm also going to be filming another junkyard video this week for those of you who have been enjoying those. I did just post one about 2 weeks ago or so, and have another one here that I'll be coming out with here hopefully later this week or maybe this coming weekend. So stay tuned for that. But anyway, thank you all so much once again. Have a great week. Be safe, healthy, happy, all that. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.